In case y'all didn't know, Black Girl Sunday. Celebrate your girl. Or not. It's whatever.
We hear about a lot of missing children, but there was something really different about Alexis. She was this social media star.
That was one of the alarming things. Does she have a stalker? Somebody following her?
One of the videos captures Alexis Murphy's vehicle pulling in. You can't really tell who's driving.
It was definitely unlikely that Alexis drove her car to some random movie theater in Charlottesville. It was still a lot of questions going through my head. What happened? Where is she?
Alexis has virtually disappeared off the face of the earth. It's just full throttle forward.
It's August 2013. In the rural enclave of Shipman, Virginia.
Go.
17-year-old Alexis Murphy is preparing for senior year at Nelson County High School.
She definitely was a person that could brighten your day on your worst day. My name is Trina Harmon Murphy, and Alexis is my great niece. She was just an incredibly humble, genuine person. She was a total package.
I'm Jasmine Murphy, and I'm Alexis' cousin. She was looking forward to her senior year playing volleyball. I did assistant coaching with her for 2 years. Seeing her play and playing against her at the open gyms, she had definitely developed and grown as a player.
Hey, where my Pacers fans at? Oh, I was serious. None? None at all.
She was definitely attached to her cell phone for sure. If the battery was dying, she would plug in multiple extension cords so that she could still move about the house and take the phone with her.
Okay, my life is pretty much complete right now. Whoever invented this, thank you so much.
Alexis's journey to the cusp of adulthood began on June 5th, 1996, when she was born into a loving, extended family.
Even when she was a baby, she was just a funny, outgoing person. She was always getting into stuff, but I definitely saw her grow up. She was definitely smart. She could come to me for things, or if I had clothes that were too small, hand me down to Alexis. She loved them.
She grew up around most of her cousins, so cousins are more like brothers and sisters.
As she got older, you saw her get more interested in music, dancing. She was forever recording herself dancing. If I was dancing in the car, she would just laugh at me and was like, don't ever do that again. Just a joy. She loved her music and dancing. She definitely did.
Alexis and her friends spend their free time at a local destination, Liberty Gas Station.
The gas station that has the McDonald's connected to it was definitely like the teenage hangout spot.
Alexis went to that gas station every single day. It's a rural county. You know, the gas station is just kind of where kids hang out.
Alexis's social world, however, extends far beyond Shipman, Virginia.
My name is Katie Love, and I was an investigative reporter covering the Alexis Murphy case. In 2013, we're just starting to understand the power of Twitter, and Alexis got it right away. You knew what she was up to because she would tweet it.
In case y'all didn't know, it's Black Girl Sunday. Celebrate your girl. Or not. It's whatever.
The average teenager probably has a couple hundred followers. Alexis was completely different. We're talking about 12,000 people who just wanted to know what she was up to. She was this social media star.
Gotta go feed the dogs. Don't nobody feel like doing that. Bring your ass here. I haven't even named whatever.
We would joke about it, and she's like, I don't even know how they're following me. I'm like, well, they obviously like what they see or what you're doing.
On Wednesday, July 31st, Alexis hangs out with her cousin, Jasmine.
After volleyball camp, I had asked her to ride with me to Madison Heights to get my eyebrows done. And I remember we had went to the Chinese place to get dinner. And I took her to McDonald's to get her frappe. I believe we had texted that Friday, just randomly, because we always do, but I hadn't talked to her at all that Saturday.
Little did she know, that was the last time that Jasmine would ever see Alexis. Later that weekend, in the early morning hours of Sunday, August 4th, Alexis's family notices something peculiar.
Alexis's grandma realizes that she's missed her 11 p.m. curfew, which is really strange. Alexis never missed curfew, was always in the house on time, and they have no idea where she is. That day, she left the house in her dad's car, the white Nissan, and the car is nowhere to be found.
Of course, her grandmother, immediately started to call her phone, but it went straight to voicemail. Alexis was always tapped into that phone. When she didn't answer it, that was a big clue. I thought she'd had a car accident. That was my first thought. Her mom works night shift at the post office, so she came home from work that morning and immediately went to the sheriff's office and filled out a missing persons report.
I'm William Everett Mays, Jr. I go by Billy. I was investigator lieutenant with Nelson County Sheriff's Office. I get a phone call, and it's brought to my attention by one of the deputies with Nelson County that this young lady didn't return home. The deputies had already spoke with the family and got a lot of information that I needed to start my investigation. Teenagers, a lot of times, tend to be a little secretive about what they're doing. We have to take into account that maybe she is with someone that she doesn't want you to know about, or she's went somewhere that she doesn't want you to know.
As Lieutenant Mays gets up to speed on the case, he's alarmed by Alexis's large Twitter following.
She had a lot of followers on social media, but with that, there's the downside. It's just a breeding ground for predators. But just in a matter of hours, I had a huge resource available. We had social media experts from the FBI that were devoted solely to that. That was critical in this case.
I remember coming through her social media and seeing some of the things people would post, like, oh, I would like to meet you, or you may see me sooner than you think. That was one of the alarming things. Does she have a stalker? Is somebody following her?
As investigators dig through the large digital trove, they spot one tweet that points to her plans for early Saturday evening.
As she was posted throughout the day, one of those said she was Berg-bound, which means she was headed to Lynchburg, which is a city just south of Lovingston.
Her family explains to investigators the enthusiasm behind the 6:04 p.m. post.
She had an appointment for her senior pictures the following week, and she loved hair and makeup, so her plans that day were to go to Lynchburg and buy hair to do her hair extensions for her senior pictures. Her mom gave her the lecture on not spending too much money on hair, and she told them she loved them and got in her car and drove away. That was her very last tweet.
Police reach out to the Lynchburg store she was headed to, but shopkeepers say she never arrived. Whether or not she ever set foot in the city is a mystery.
The million-dollar question is why? Why she deviated from that plan, and was that voluntary?
To track her movements, Mays subpoenas Alexis's cell records. But while he waits for the results, late that afternoon, Trina devises a plan to find her using an app called Find My Phone.
Oak Ridge Estates was the last location that the Find Me app on her phone actually provided. It's a vast piece of property. It's several thousand acres. So a lot of resources from the sheriff's office and the state police are focused on that area. There was a huge gathering of people. There was tons and tons of people willing to help.
By 6:30, there was a state trooper helicopter in the air looking for her car. By 7:15, the first FBI agent was on the scene. You're on a pendulum between hope and despair.
A suspect on the road to Lynchburg.
It almost made you afraid to even be out at night alone.
And clues from Alexis's final moments lead police to the end of a dirt road.
It looks like something out of a horror movie.
In late July, days before Alexis disappeared, her aunt dropped by her home.
It was just a typical visit, and she was just her happy-go-lucky self, you know. We said our goodbyes as always. Love you, see you later, and that was it. I mean, the normal moments are the ones that are really important, you know. Lord knows I wish I had known that was the last time I was going to see her.
Just hours after Alexis is reported missing, an app called Find My Phone leads police to a 4,800-acre estate called Oak Ridge.
They're searching areas thinking perhaps there was a vehicle accident, that she had ran off the road. We also had contacted the state police for their helicopters to come in and fly the area. So a lot of the attention was focused in that area.
After hours of searching, investigators begin to question the accuracy of the phone tracking app.
Law enforcement find nothing, so it kind of leads them back to square one. That was like this alarm of what is going on.
Perhaps she's establishing a little bit more independence and she wants a little more privacy, as most teenagers do. But her family was very adamant that that was not the case. This probably is bigger than what we think.
With Alexis's phone records still pending, authorities widen their search radius and call in more help, as Mays takes a darker view of the situation.
It's becoming more evident to me that this is probably not a defiant juvenile and this is probably not an accident. So time is of the essence, it's critical. And I was basically the one overseeing all this. We reach out to the Virginia State Police for their special agents, and we probably had close to 50, 60 special agents from the FBI there, which was incredible.
I definitely saw that this was something serious now, more serious than we had thought before.
As the investigation intensifies, the Murphy family's plight explodes into the spotlight.
In the newsroom, we hear about a lot of missing children, but there was something really different about Alexis and how strange it was for this girl to suddenly have no trace.
Family members say 17-year-old Alexis Murphy is a good girl, star volleyball player at Nelson County High School, a devoted daughter who always answers her phone and text.
She became everybody's daughter, everybody's niece, everybody's granddaughter.
But Laura Murphy has been unable to contact her daughter since August 3rd.
Somebody knows something. If it's the littlest thing that they may not think is important, it is.
It allowed people to connect with her family. It was amazing to see how many people organized search parties after search parties looking for Alexis.
My name is Mark Egeman. I work for the Virginia Department of Emergency Management as a search and rescue coordinator. Watching this story develop and grow in the news until we get that call from state police. And then that's when we become involved and it becomes an active mission for us. You have a tremendous amount of woods and country to have to search on foot.
The whole community has mobilized at this point. This was very out of the norm for Nelson County.
It's unclear at this point if investigators have found anything of use for them as they continue to search for Alexis Murphy.
In the midst of this publicity, law enforcement scrutinizes the road Alexis would have taken to Lynchburg. In recent years, it has been the site of a rash of mysterious crimes.
Last count, I believe it's 32 young women and men that are missing on some portion of the 29 corridor. There's something going on for sure on the 29 corridor that needs attention.
Locals attribute this violence to a single anonymous culprit.
When I first started working for Nelson County Sheriff's Office, I had heard about the 29 stalker. There were some young ladies that had been abducted along Route 29 from, say, Albemarle all the way up to Barboursville. You start to wonder if this is something that is connected. Yeah, it was a scare.
It almost made you afraid to even be out at night alone. It was definitely one of those things you kind of opened your eyes even more.
But soon, on Monday, August 5th, 2 days after she vanished, Mays received some crucial documents. Alexis's cell phone records.
We started looking at the cell phone information and the cell phone records, and were able to determine that Oak Ridge that we didn't need to be there. The phone was pinging somewhere else. One of those hits indicated she was in the Liberty gas station. That's where the focus went at that point. We were able to go and pull that video surveillance of Alexis being there.
Could this footage be the key to finding Alexis?
She was there, and she was there alone. So we were trying to connect all those dots and put those pieces of the puzzle together. That's the last known ping on her cell phone. We knew that this was probably the last known place that she was when she went missing.
In the case of Alexis Murphy, police have obtained surveillance footage from the Liberty gas station on the day she disappeared, after her last tweet around 6 p.m. Could this video hold clues to her whereabouts?
It was somewhere around 7 p.m. What I seen when we watched the video was Alexis coming into the store to pay for her gas. She looked fine when she was inside to me. She didn't appear to be distressed or distraught or in any kind of danger or scared, and she was there alone. There was really nothing that looked out of place. And then she exits the gas station. She could be very close when she left. It was somewhere around 7 p.m., and I believe it was 7:17 p.m. It was the last activity on her phone. So we have roughly a 17-minute window there that we're trying to figure out what happened. We were starting to canvass the area, the perimeter around the Liberty gas station, talking to every resident there. We're looking for this young lady and her phone. There is a car lot directly across Route 29. We were searching that area and searching trunks of cars just because we didn't know.
Law enforcement finds no sign of Alexis or her car or phone. But on August 6th, 3 days after she went missing, a tipster contacts police about a major discovery in Charlottesville.
Tuesday evening, someone just who had watched the news and had heard about Alexis Murphy's disappearance had noticed this vehicle sitting there and called us and said, "Hey, this car is here in Charlottesville." So, of course, we drop everything. We haul freight to Charlottesville. It was Alexis Murphy's car. I wasn't expecting it to be found in Charlottesville. Wasn't close to Nelson County.
The city of Charlottesville lies about 40 miles north of Alexis's hometown of Shipman and 70 miles north of Lynchburg.
It was the Carmichael Cinema area. Then, of course, the media is there before I get there. And it's a circus. It's ridiculous. It made it very difficult for us to get in there to do what we needed to do.
It was leaked on social media that the car was found before the police ever had the opportunity to call and tell us.
It was definitely unlikely that Alexis drove her car to some random movie theater in Charlottesville. If she said she was going to the Berg, then that's where she was going, to Lynchburg. It's odd to end up the opposite direction in which you said you were going. But when I got the news that they had found her car, I wanted something. Some kind of answer to, besides, okay, they found her car. Is she in there? Or what's in the trunk?
My biggest fear was when we popped the trunk, Alexis was going to be in the trunk. And when we do open the trunk, she isn't. Which, it was a relief, but at the same time, it's like, where is she? And her phone is not there.
So you go from, yay, she might still be alive, to, okay, where do we go from here? This is a big piece of the puzzle, but Alexis has virtually disappeared off the face of the earth. You can't find their phone. It's just full throttle forward.
Determined to figure out how the car got there, Mays obtains surveillance footage from surrounding businesses.
There's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of hours of CCTV that we're going through. And luckily, one of the videos captures Alexis Murphy's vehicle pulling in on Sunday night at around, I believe it was around 10 o'clock. It's a real grainy video. You can't really tell who's driving. You can just tell that there is a figure that gets out of it. And the subject walks out of frame. It was a creepy scene.
Could this mysterious figure be Alexis? Despite her bold personality, her family thinks otherwise.
She was definitely scared of the dark, so her to walk off in the dark without a light, no, was definitely unlikely to be Alexis.
While the individual does not appear to be Alexis, their identity is unknown.
You can't identify if it's a man, a woman, age, anything. It's not Alexis driving the car, but we have no idea who this person was. Search teams are still out there looking for any clues of where Alexis had gone.
Desperate to understand the mystery figure's connection to Alexis, investigators re-examine the footage from the gas station.
When you look at the video going back, there was an individual that held the door open for her. And there was some small talk.
There was something really interesting, and they see something they had never seen before. There was a man holding the door for Alexis Murphy. And it looks like on the footage that there's some sort of conversation between Alexis and this unidentified man. So suddenly, there is a new person of interest in the case. So we're starting to wonder if it's the same person in Charlottesville.
In hopes of identifying a man seen in surveillance footage, police in the Alexis Murphy investigation race to where it was recorded, Liberty gas station.
So there was a question of whether that was someone who maybe was involved in Alexis's disappearance. The attendants who work there were able to easily say, this is a guy named Randy Taylor. He was not someone who just kind of slid under community radar. This is a distinctive man who has this huge Daffy Duck tattoo on his neck. The gas station attendant knew Randy because he has a car that's very distinctive, this camo truck.
Once Lieutenant Mays learns of Taylor's vehicle, he digs deeper into the footage.
The cameras, unfortunately, were not all over the parking lot. But there is a camera that's on a portion of the parking lot, and it catches just a tiny piece of Route 29 just a few minutes after Alexis exits the gas station. You see this camouflage vehicle and Alexis Murphy's white cars directly behind it. She was actually going north toward Charlottesville, and now she's following him.
The big question is we have no idea why she followed him, which is really strange. What's going on?
Mays sizes up the investigation's new prime target.
We've got to come up with a game plan. Let's figure out what the best avenue of attack is as far as the interview with him, and let's pin him down.
Investigators discover that Taylor lives in a camper just off of Route 29. 4 days after Alexis disappeared, Mays heads towards the property.
We had put him under 24 hour surveillance. I was told by the other agents where this camper was located, but I couldn't find it. The grass was so high around the driveway. It goes into this property. So I finally locate this road. We pull in, and we're basically walking up to this thing. It's just an old abandoned house. Then there's this blue and white camper. It looks like something out of a horror movie. I remember knocking on Randy's door, and he opens the door. We explained to Randy why we're there. And I basically asked him about being at the Liberty gas station. We were looking for this young lady, and he said he had no knowledge. He's never seen her, didn't know her, wasn't at the Liberty gas station, had no idea what we were talking about. And that was an important part of the case for me because I knew then that he was hiding something. But once we confront him with the evidence, there's a video of him holding the door for her, and things changed. He told us he ran into her at Liberty. He admits that she was there.
Without prompting, Taylor launches into a story.
He even goes on to elaborate that he met Alexis Murphy probably a year prior to this at a car wash. He was smoking some marijuana, and she had made a comment about the marijuana. According to him, she was talking about how it smelled like some really good stuff. So when he saw her at the Liberty gas station on August 3rd, he knew who she was.
When pressed again about the August 3rd encounter, Taylor offers an astonishing account.
Also, he's telling us that she's with a black guy, and they're talking about a marijuana sale, and Randy wanted to buy from the guy that she was with. So they come up with an agreement, and they leave, and he goes to his camper. Alexis comes, and this other gentleman follows suit. He buys marijuana. They have some small talk, shoot the bull, and they leave together. That's the last he's seen of her. I didn't believe the story, but we could not rule out the possibility of someone else being involved.
To validate Taylor's story, Mays files for a warrant to search his trailer. Alexis's social media is also scoured in search of the man in Taylor's description.
They got the picture off of some Facebook page or something, but very quickly we were able to identify this guy as Damien. Damien was a resident of Nelson County, but he leaves town shortly after Alexis Murphy is missing and goes to Alabama. That was alarming. That was enough for us to further investigate this.
I knew Damien. We went to high school together. So Alexis' relationship with Damien, I don't know exactly what it was. I knew he worked at McDonald's at the time. She always was at McDonald's getting a frappe. Was he one of the last people to see her? Did he have something to do with it? Did he know about it? It was still a lot of questions going through my head. What happened? Where is she?
Police uncover disturbing clues.
We see that a fingernail is embedded into the carpet. Hearing this kind of evidence, your stomach just turns.
Authorities close in on a suspect.
I don't think he expected the rain of hell that came down on him.
And cryptic circumstances envelop Alexis's final moments.
So it leaves me with the $1 million question. How did you get her there?
Investigators have learned that a friend of Alexis, who left town after she disappeared, may have been the last person to see her alive.
So myself and Special Agent Pittman with the FBI, we flew to Alabama. We made arrangements to meet with Damien and talk to him in further detail about what his involvement may or may not have been.
As they sit down to interrogate Damien, Mays asks him about his whereabouts on the weekend Alexis vanished.
He was in Nelson County staying in a hotel with his girlfriend. He said he was at the blood bank donating plasma, and this was right around the time that she went missing. But he wasn't anywhere close to where Alexis was here in Nelson County. So he wasn't even in the area when she went missing. He said he had no involvement whatsoever.
After the interrogation, Mays returns to Virginia and digs into Damien's account of the weekend of August 3rd.
We were able to corroborate his timeline and his alibis. There was nothing. There was no dots to connect with Damien. It was just another ploy for Randy to throw the investigation off.
After clearing Damien, critical information in the case against Randy Taylor comes through.
We were able to secure a search warrant for his camper. We executed that search warrant. We go in, we explain to Randy why we're there, and we pull him out of the camper. The forensic techs go in and start the evidence recovery process.
They go to his house, his trashy dump of a camper. It was a bit messy. Inside, they find evidence. We see that a fingernail is embedded into the carpet, but they find a hair extension and then a diamond stud. Hearing this kind of evidence, your stomach just turns.
It wasn't something good when I heard that they found all those things there. Because those are things that any girl, you're not going to just let that go. It had to be taken from you. Alexis didn't have false nails, things like that. It's not going to just come out easy.
The evidence is sent for DNA testing. Then, authorities search the grounds around the camper for Alexis's body.
Behind the property, there was just all kinds of garbage and trash that had been piled up, and there's a mountain. And behind the house, there's a trail that goes up the mountain. We searched the side of the mountain to see if he's taken her up the mountain. It was a very difficult search. You know, everybody's getting ate up by ticks and chiggers. We blanketed that side of the ridge, and we have nothing. No indication that anybody had been up there, no four-wheel tracks, nothing.
Her cell phone was still missing, and she's still missing. We were still hopeful that we could find more evidence. So I actually reached out to administrators with the Department of Corrections and inquired a little bit more about these cell phone dogs.
We learned that law enforcement is using canine dogs to sniff a very specific adhesive found in phones. We start to see canines sniffing Randy Taylor's camper. These law enforcement dogs are smelling some sort of scent, and they find Alexis Murphy's phone just 70 feet from Randy Taylor's camper. It's broken. It looks like someone's tried to take out the battery. Finding Alexis's white iPhone was the nail in the coffin.
This was her lifeline. I have that on your property, and she's not here. Something terrible has happened. So I really think that pretty much sealed the deal. I went ahead and arrested him for abduction with intent to defile. He looked like a ghost. I mean, like a deer in headlights. I don't think Randy expected the rain of hell that came down on him as fast as it came down on him.
After the arrest, Mays seeks out the Murphy family for a difficult discussion.
So a decision was made to set the family down and tell them we don't think she's alive and we want to go forward with a murder charge. And to do that, we had to have their support and understanding that she is dead.
I think we had to agree with the evidence that was presented before us, because obviously the evidence was there, right? And we can't find her. She has had no contact with her family. That was kind of the defining moment to know that chances are she wasn't here anymore.
As the case heads to trial, police make Randy Taylor an offer.
Before the trial, law enforcement offered Randy Taylor a deal 20 years if you just tell the family where Alexis Murphy's body is. His response, give me 10 and I'll tell you where she is. It's like really unbelievable.
Months later, in May 2014, at the Nelson County Courthouse, the first-degree murder trial of Randy Taylor begins. While the prosecution has a wealth of evidence, the lack of a corpse presents a problem.
This was an unprecedented case in Virginia. To try someone for murder with no body. It's very hard to prosecute without a body.
In May 2014, the murder trial of Randy Taylor commences. On behalf of the state, prosecutor Anthony Martin delivers the opening statement.
The prosecution was able to paint this really violent scene with the amount of evidence that was just found inside of this camper. Something horrible has happened.
But in their opening argument, Taylor's attorney takes aim at the prosecution's assertions.
The defense was constantly saying, there's no body, there's no murder weapon. They kept hitting on it.
His explanation of the hair extensions was the police planted it, but we knew that he was full of it.
After opening statements, the prosecution unloads its most potent evidence, an item discovered on a deeper search of Taylor's camper after his arrest.
One thing I will never forget is Randy Taylor's bloody t-shirt. Seeing the t-shirt covered in not just a little bit, but a lot of blood, you could tell the jury's mood suddenly shift.
Attorneys reveal the results of DNA testing on items found inside the camper.
And it was her DNA on the shirt. It's a mix of blood and saliva and fluid. Or we have her DNA on these hair extensions that were found. They're glued and woven into the hair. They don't just fall out. That indicated to us that there was a violent struggle that took place.
We know that there was nothing casual about this encounter, that it was extremely violent.
After closing arguments, the litigators turn the case over to the jury. Within hours, the jurors announce that they've reached a verdict.
I was at volleyball practice. I remember looking online and seeing guilty. And I just busted out in tears. It was a relief, like kind of a joy for us, because you're going away. You're not going to hurt anybody else.
It was a few moments of the weight has been lifted. We have some type of justice. And we did celebrate, but the next morning we still woke up to the same reality. We still don't have her.
We convict him on both counts of abduction with intent to defile and first-degree murder. And as the jury is leaving to go sentence him, Randy stood up in open court and said, "I'll take the original deal of 20 years and tell you where she is." And of course, it's too late at that point. He ended up with 2 consecutive life sentences and is currently at Red Onion spending the rest of his life in prison. So,
in the case of Taylor's continued silence, anger and mystery linger over what transpired in Alexis's final moments captured on video.
One of the big mysteries of this case is why we see Alexis Murphy's car following Randy Taylor's. We have no idea why she followed him. Somehow he gets this beautiful, talented young girl to follow him to his trashy dump of a camper. I still can't even wrap my mind around it.
Billy Mays believes the footage tells the story of a drug deal gone bad.
I think Randy had some conversation with her in the parking lot prior to coming into the store about some marijuana that he had. So I really, truly think that she followed Randy back to his camper in the thought of purchasing marijuana.
I find it impossible to believe that she would have voluntarily gone anywhere with Randy Taylor. Alexis didn't have to go with Randy Taylor if she really wanted weed. So it leaves me with the million-dollar question, how did you get her there?
Despite Taylor's conviction, he refuses to reveal the location of Alexis's remains.
I can't go put flowers on my niece's grave. I can't take little pink trinkets, which was her favorite color, to put at her grave. So I will continue to look for her until I'm either not here or she's found.
Whether or not Alexis's body is ever found, her family and community will never forget her.
I still think about Alexis all the time. Her face is on my refrigerator. I have a t-shirt with her face on it. My daughter, who I now have, will know about Alexis. There was such a bright future ahead for this young lady.
I grieve the what ifs the most, Where would she have gone to college? What would she have majored in? Would she have met the love of her life, in school? Would she be married? Would she have kids?
It's still unreal because it's like, how can this happen to her? You kind of sit back there and wonder, what if she stayed home that day? What if? It's always that question of what if.
And they'll always remember their final moments with Alexis.
I remember we had went to the Chinese place to get dinner, and I took her to McDonald's to get a frappe. It's one of the things that I always think about, especially when it comes up the anniversary date of her going missing.
The last time I saw Alexis was the weekend before she was abducted. The normal moments are the ones that are really important. Family gatherings and parties and celebrations and regular moments. We said our goodbyes as always. Love you, see you later, and that was it. Lord knows I wish I had known that was the last time I was going to see her.
That's Mom. It's her going into the house.
She walks in, that was it.
A mom is missing. This beautiful blonde, very young and vivacious woman.
Everybody was starting to reach out, and nobody had heard from her.
I tried to message her to her. I tried to call her on Messenger.
Police had to look at those facts and say she could just be off the grid right now.
We don't have a crime scene. We don't have an obvious crime.
There's no body. There's no murder weapon.
Right here, right here.
Yeah.
It's gonna look like he's dragging something. What the hell did we just watch?
Billings, Montana, 2018. The fiercely independent city on the edge of the Rocky Mountains is in the middle of an economic boom. It's here that 49-year-old Laura Johnson has come to experience her own independence after years of raising her children.
Yep. Yeah, that's probably the best picture of my mom. All I know My mom got some 80s hair going on, and my dad actually has a full set of hair. Seeing all of us as an actual family, holy smokes.
Laura grew up in Vancouver, Washington, and met her future husband Howard there when she was 18.
By the time my mom was 23, she had 5 boys. She loved the fact that she was a mother. She always told us, I would never regret having all of you kids. She was extremely loving, and she was amazingly funny as well. And she gets that from her dad, who's just a jokester at every turn.
She was a wonderful mom. Always helped with everything. Always treated everybody like their family.
My dad worked the regular 9 to 5. Mom stayed at home, raised the kids. She was very nurturing.
She did everything. Every night she'd cook dinner. And for the amount of people that we had, I felt like it was a lot, but she made it look always easy, so.
She always made it a deal to have a good meal. Big old feast. My entire career has been in food service, and that's mostly due to the fact that I grew up cooking in the kitchen with my mom.
But in 2012, their children grown and out of the house, Laura and her husband Howard separate, and Laura moves to the Las Vegas, Nevada area.
I definitely think she wanted to find her own sense of happiness. You know, a woman in her 40s having that for the first time, that's got to be empowering, you know what I mean? So she did tell me that she had joined a dating app.
And it isn't long before Laura meets someone she really likes. His name is Greg Green.
Greg was one of the people who she was matched with. He worked in Vegas right there. They went out on a couple of dates, and then it went to the point where she was living with him in Nevada.
Although she now lives 1,000 miles away from her family in Vancouver, Washington, Laura keeps in regular touch with her sons.
My mom was never really good about keeping a cell phone. So our main points of communication were Facebook.
She was consistently on Facebook. Like, you can click on Messenger and her little thing would be green.
In July of 2018, Greg Green gets a job in Billings, Montana. Laura follows him there in August, and soon after, she lands a job at a Papa John's restaurant. After her first day at work, Laura calls her son, Stephen.
I remember the last time that I talked to her on the phone was when she was driving home. It was literally just, talk to each other, see how life's going, have some laughs. But it's not until you look back, you wish you did more with your time,
On September 18th, 2018, Laura's sons become concerned that she has stopped communicating with them.
My older brother, Howard Jr., he spoke to my mom every day. He called me and said, "Hey, have you guys heard from Mom?" And I haven't heard from her. I looked on Facebook. It said that she hadn't been active for a couple days. So then I called Steven. I was like, "Hey, have you talked to Mom?"
Jonathan called me on the 18th. The fact that Jonathan had even called me in the first place was a huge red flag. Because if there was a way to get a hold of her, he totally could have, you know what I mean? But now he's at the point to where he's like, I need help. I called my mom, and every time the phone goes straight to voicemail. I've tried messaging her, I've tried to call her on Messenger, I've tried to call her job, and the job is just like, yeah, she hasn't shown up for work since September 13th. Like all of this, and I'm coming up with nothing.
Nobody had heard from her.
I called Greg. He picked up. He says, came home from work on the 13th, and she was gone. All of her stuff's gone. All of it. I don't know anything. He doesn't know where she is.
September 24th, 2018. Laura's sons have been trying to reach her for 6 days.
So then I started calling the police department out there.
We asked the Billings, Montana Police Department to do welfare checks.
Officers went to Miss Johnson's residence to attempt to make contact and speak with her. The gate was locked. There was 2 large dogs in the yard. They weren't friendly. The house was quiet, and they weren't able to make any contact. Officers went to Miss Johnson's work and was advised that her last day of work was on the 13th, and she had not been to work since then.
Detectives tracked down her boyfriend, Greg.
When officers spoke with Gregory, he told them that on the 13th he had gone to work. And when he returned that day, he found that she was gone and she had packed her 2 red suitcases that she had brought with her and had left. The majority of people that contact police departments looking for their loved ones or wanting welfare checks done, those people are found eventually. You know, maybe they did go on a vacation and they didn't tell somebody. I think a lot of people, with the fast-paced life that we have, people want to take a break, they want to disconnect from life, and that can be something you have to take into consideration when looking for people.
What the law enforcement officers told me was, you are telling us that she's missing. We're not saying wrong, but we don't have enough information to say that you're right. The fact that it was a grown woman, people believe that if they aren't being found, it's because they don't want to be found. And anybody who knows my mom in this situation know that that's fundamentally not true. So the sense of like, something's happened became very real.
It's been 13 days since anyone has had any contact with Laura, and her family is getting anxious.
I posted a picture of my mom, and he said, "We have not heard from my mom," and just explained the situation. A lot of people commented on there.
The post was getting a ton of shares. I thought that the whole thing was just strange. The fact that, her sons haven't heard from her. We don't know where she is. She hasn't showed up to her job yet. She's not responding to text messages. The first thing that I do when I see something like that is I do reach out to law enforcement.
September 27th of 2018, I did receive a call from one of the local reporters regarding a Facebook post involving Laura Johnson. So the next thing I did after I got off the phone was started to research the case. While we haven't reached the level that there was a crime committed, things were starting to fall in place that not everything was right.
Investigators find baffling clues in Laura's disappearance.
There was a recent phone ping from Washington that showed that the phone had been there on September 26th.
And learn of a troubling past.
She had a prior addiction, and she could just be off the grid right now.
I'm not just going to sit here. The next logical step was to go to Montana.
September 27th, 2018. Laura Johnson's family has not heard from her in 2 weeks. Her boyfriend, Greg Green, tells police he hasn't seen her since September 13th, which was also the last day she was at work.
At this point, it's still unknown where she's at, unknown if there's foul play involved. We just had not gotten any information conclusive one way or the other.
Police ask Laura's son, Stephen, if there is anything going on in her life they should know about. Stephen tells them that years before, she was injured and that she became addicted to prescription painkillers. But at the time of her disappearance, she was getting treatment and doing well.
There was a feeling that potentially she may have relapsed due to her addiction.
Police had to look at those facts and say, well, she does have a history of use. She had a prior addiction, and she could just be off the grid right now.
Detectives reach out to the clinic where Laura has been going for treatment.
The clinic advised me that she had been there every single day for 3 weeks prior to the 13th.
If Laura has relapsed, detectives know she could be in hiding somewhere. They go back to Greg Green, hoping he can help focus the search. But he doesn't have anything to add to his previous statement that Laura had moved out on September 13th, and he hasn't seen her since.
He was quite cooperative. He consented to a search of his home. Officers didn't locate any items that they thought were suspicious at that time. And Gregory had allowed them to look through his phone, which he showed them some messages that he had sent to Laura after she had left.
We don't have an obvious crime. We just know that she's been missing.
Investigators subpoena Laura's phone records, and when the data comes in, there's a glimmer of hope that Laura is alive and well.
There was a recent phone ping from Washington that showed that the phone had been there on September 26th.
Detectives wonder if Laura went back to her hometown of Vancouver, Washington, where her sons and ex-husband live.
From an investigative standpoint, it made sense because that's where some of her support network would be.
Sergeant Billings called and said, I got some great news for you. I was like, oh, she did show up in town. I got excited.
Laura's sons immediately start searching all over Vancouver for her.
Me and my wife drove around for 2 hours to every business that was open, showing pictures of my mom, asking if anybody had seen her. So I was like, if she's in town, she's obviously would be at one of the hotels for sure. None of the hotels are like, nope, haven't seen her. Nobody's seen her. Not a single person.
Laura's sons are disappointed that there is no sign of her. Then they get disturbing news. The investigators made a mistake when tracking Laura's phone.
When they pinged my mom's phone, they pinged the last incoming call, and it was my dad. And it was on his birthday, because he spoke to my mom every year on his birthday. He knew everything that was going on, and he's like, well, it's my birthday, so hopefully she answers.
Laura never answered that call, and detectives realized that she was never in Vancouver. It's been 18 days since Laura Johnson disappeared, and her son Stephen decides he has to take action.
Being all the way in Washington and realizing that I wasn't going to get an answer, that was the next logical step, was to go to Montana. I was like, I'm not just going to sit here.
I couldn't let him go alone. They said to themselves, we're going to just get in the car and we're going to drive 14 hours over to Billings, and we're just going to go look for her ourselves.
So the first place that we went was the police station. And what they tell us is, as long as I didn't break the law, I could do anything. I had inclinations about who the person Greg was, and none of that ever sat right with me.
Stephen calls Greg, looking for more details about the last time he saw his mother.
He picked up, it was him. You know, who are you? What is this? Hangs up the phone. So I went to his house. I was yelling my mom's name. I'm yelling Laura. I'm yelling Mom. I think that she's in there. And then that's when he lets the dogs out. So I go up to the dogs, and they're loud, but they're not dangerous at all. So I just bent down and started petting the dog, you know. And that's when he came out of the trailer and lights a cigarette, and he's, you know, can I help you? And I tell him, I was like, I'm Stephen Johnson. Like, Laura's my mother. I believe you know where she is, and I would like you to tell me. And he's like, no, I came home and she was gone. He's very cocky. He's just standing there smoking a cigarette. I told him, I believe you know where my mother is. I will be the one to put you behind bars, and I'll be the end of you. So he tells me to leave, and he calls the cops on me.
October 1st, 2018. Steven Johnson has driven from his home in Vancouver, Washington to Billings, Montana to try to find his missing mother, Laura. After a disturbing encounter with Laura's boyfriend, Greg Green, Steven's next step is to create flyers and post them all over Billings.
When we went anywhere, we handed these out. So we went to Greg's work, and we put them all over his window at work, and then he tore them all off.
We were like texting, we're like, all right, has anybody heard? Anybody heard? Like, we want to know, like, what's going on?
We woke up 8 o'clock every single morning with a place to go to, an idea in mind, with somebody to talk to just try to find something. So at the end of every day, I'm calling my brothers, telling them, here's what we did. Here's who we talked to.
It was very frustrating because this is like what you see on TV. I never thought in my life I would ever go through it.
One of the hardest things for me was dealing with frustrations with the family, understanding their concerns, understanding their desire to have, swift justice.
We can't just go to Mr. Green's residence and knock the door in and do a search without a warrant. We've got proper legal procedure. And at that time, we were lacking enough information to use the search warrant process in order to further develop Ms. Johnson's case.
It was frustrating not being able to get a real reaction. So it just felt like our duty to prove it.
We've talked to everybody who we can. We've been to the doctor's office. We've been to the Salvation Army. Everything comes up empty. We had gone through every single dead end. We had been through all of Greg's neighbors with no answer, with no solution. We were nowhere closer on day 5 than we were on day 1. And the last thing before we leave town that we figure we can do is go knock on the neighbors' houses again.
As they are knocking on the door of the neighbor across the street from Greg, Steven sees something he hadn't noticed before.
I basically stopped and I said, hey, I think we found something. There is a camera at the one place that we're interested in.
It points right at the driveway of where Greg and Laura lived.
Steven and Casey had talked to the owner a few days before. Now, they ring his doorbell again, hoping to get access to the footage.
And the first thing he says is, do you want to see? And I said, what are you talking about? And he goes, I have my camera footage pulled up because you were asking me about your mom. He invites me in, and for the next 35 minutes, I'm just on his floor, looking at a bunch of video. So the first thing we pull up is September 13th, the last day she went to work. And then Casey's recording it on her phone. You could speed it up. So we're going through. So we're watching the camera footage. And then this is where it gets very interesting. It's him right here.
Keep playing.
What happens is Greg gets home first. Greg gets home and parks his truck and goes inside. And 35 minutes later, right here,
Oh.
my mom gets home. Right there. So, it's mom.
Blonde
It
hair.
is 7:07 on September 13th.
God looks excited
That's
to
her.
see her.
It's her going into the house. We were told time and time again that Greg's story is, I came home and she was gone. I came home and she was gone. She had taken all of her stuff and it was gone. So, we got him. He was lying. But, well, where is she? So we're watching the footage. Day turns to night.
What time is it?
Right now,
11:27? 10:27?
10:27.
There he is. The headlamp?
Headlamp on. We see Greg throughout the entire night. Right here, right here.
Yeah.
It's gonna look like he's dragging something back. Just moving. Going back and forth between the house.
That's when we call the detectives, like, you need to come see this.
Stephen Johnson has discovered home security footage of his missing mother, Laura. It shows her at the house she shared with Greg Green after the time Greg told police she had left. Realizing the importance of the discovery, he calls the police.
Approximately 11:15 that night, I go to that neighbor's house and we watch the footage in question. We then start viewing the video in greater detail. And it was definitely very concerning.
The detective's trained eye spots something that Stephen and Casey missed.
The footage shows the area of the driveway where Laura Johnson is observed coming home that evening, and she's exiting the vehicle and walking toward the trailer. Gregory, he's also seen going back into the garage and coming out with 2 red-colored suitcases in that vehicle as well.
The same 2 red suitcases that Greg told officers that Laura had taken with her when she moved out. And then, the detective sees something that changes the investigation from a missing persons case to something much more disturbing.
And you can see him walking out with that large, heavy object. That's zoomed in to show that area of the vehicle where he puts what we believe is Laura's body into the vehicle. And then ultimately he's observed putting a shovel in the back of the pickup bed before he leaves that evening just after 7 p.m. We believe that more than likely that is her body, but we need a lot more evidence to prove that at this point. That was kind of a gut-wrenching feeling to know that you just observed somebody's last moments.
What the hell did we just watch? The only logical answer is, Greg ended my mother's life that night. And finally dawns on me, like after all of this, that I'll probably never get to see my mom again. is that I'll never get another goodbye. I'll never get that closure. I'll never get the last I love you. I'll never get any of it. It's just gone.
But unless police can prove that it is Laura's body on the video, they don't have a crime. On October 5th, 3 weeks since Laura was last seen, Billings police asked Greg to come into the station for questioning.
Gregory told us what he had initially told officers. He told us that on the 13th, when he got home that evening, she was gone and her 2 red suitcases were gone.
In that video, it shows Greg pulling those suitcases out of the house and packing them up in his truck.
He seemed very surprised when we told him that there was video, and then he decided that he didn't want to talk to us anymore. We informed him that he was not going to be allowed to go back to his home. We believed that that was a crime scene at this point. The vehicle he drove to the police department was impounded at that point.
We have now crossed into full-on criminal investigation. We do believe a crime has committed.
We had probable cause at that point to seek a search warrant for his residence. But we didn't have enough information to that point to make an arrest. We executed that search warrant that evening and began to process the trailer where Gregory and Laura lived. One of the first things that we noted was the strong odor of new carpet smell. In the back room of Gregory's home, it was obvious that the carpet had been replaced very recently, and that was suspicious to us.
But because police find no proof that Laura is dead, they have to release Greg.
At this point, we still don't have a body. We still haven't located Miss Johnson. There was not enough to arrest Mr. Green for the disappearance of Miss Johnson.
It's a crushing blow to the family.
After them basically telling him, hey, we know you're lying, they let him go.
The entire family was, really upset. Because you have all this video, but you don't arrest him. Why?
There's a lot of frustration, but I would say it was mainly based around, this guy did all of this, and we could just see right through him.
We work closely with the county attorney's office and trying to determine, what more we need to get to that point to make an arrest. I had to remain focused on what needed to be done to build a case against him.
While the forensics team examines Greg's seized work truck, detectives have a strategy to keep an eye on Greg.
One of the last things we did when we searched the residence is we placed a tracker on his vehicle. We believe that he did more than likely take Laura's body to some location to bury her. We placed the tracker on with the hope of he might go back out to the location.
The tracker is placed on Greg's personal car, the same one that Laura is seen driving on surveillance video on September 13th. On October 5th, hours after his interview with detectives, Greg Green starts to move.
And at approximately 10 p.m. that evening, his vehicle started to move towards the interstate, heading west outside of Billings. So we began to follow him. He drove straight through the night, and we realized that he was leaving the state.
October 5th, 2018. Greg Green is the prime suspect in the presumed murder of Laura Johnson. Lacking evidence of a crime, detectives have to let Greg walk free. But they have placed a tracker on his car, and he appears to be leaving Billings, Montana, in a hurry.
His vehicle started to move towards the interstate and heading west outside of Billings.
Detectives track Greg as he drives for 16 hours across 5 states to his old hometown in Henderson, Nevada.
If you're being interviewed by police about the whereabouts of your ex-girlfriend and you just hightail it out of town, it's not a good look.
We were coordinating with law enforcement where he was at. They knew that we were tracking him. They would do drive-bys, make sure that we knew his whereabouts.
Meanwhile, Billings police continue the search for evidence to arrest Greg. Using his cell phone data, they track Greg's movements during the night of September 13th, which leads them to the local Walmart.
We were able to locate footage of him going to Walmart that evening. And when he went through the self-checkout, we did see a very distinct abrasion on his face, which we thought was very suspicious at that point.
Then, another crucial piece of evidence emerges from the forensic search of Greg's impounded work truck.
I noticed that the vehicle was very clean. It had been washed recently. So after 2 days processing that vehicle for biological material, taking swabs from various locations on the seat, we found 3 very, very small 1 to 2 millimeter stains that appeared to be blood.
That evidence came back from the crime lab, and sure enough, it was Laura's blood.
The totality of all of the evidence that we had located, including the blood on the door of that truck, and together with video footage showing him carrying out what we believed was Laura's body, at that point there was enough evidence to arrest him.
Hey, Greg. I remember you. You remember? Alright. So you know why we're here? I imagine so, yes. Okay. So, something changed or something like this, or? Well, we have a warrant for your arrest for murder homicide, so that's what's changed. That's why you're here in handcuffs. Okay. And you'll be expected back to Billings. Huh. For deliberate homicide. Deliberate homicide. Deliberate homicide. Do you want to tell us what happened with her when she came home that night? And what you did with her, that's your decision. I'm not going to press you. That's what I want to know. I did everything that I know already. Okay, well, we both know that's not true. So if you don't want to talk to me, we'll end that there. Okay.
After being held for 7 months in a Nevada jail, Greg is extradited to Billings. More than a year later, in February 2020, his trial is set to begin. But without Laura Johnson's body, a conviction is far from a sure thing.
We had a theory of what we believed happened, but we just didn't have a body. This is the very first case that I've ever had that involves a no-body homicide arrest. When you're trying to convict somebody of deliberate homicide and you don't have a body to go along with that, it can be very stressful.
What is your evidence? Can you really make it stick?
Drug surveillance video and murder. Testimony begins in the trial of a Billings man accused of killing Laura Johnson.
We sat right behind him the entire time. I was not happy at all.
He was not taking anything seriously. I don't know if he was just in disbelief, like this is really happening, so he just kind of like went numb to it.
He maintained his innocence the entire time, even though there was video being played in the courtroom of him carrying what appeared to be Laura's body out of his house.
The evidence in this case will show you that the defendant took great lengths to cover up his murder of his girlfriend, Laura.
Prosecutors present jurors with a possible motive for the brutal murder. Laura was about to permanently end her rocky relationship with Greg.
One of the things we did learn from the trial was she had moved into a separate bedroom, and she was saving money to try to leave.
He acted like he was at home sitting on his couch. And yeah, he didn't care whatsoever. He thought he was like at home watching Netflix or something.
He knew exactly where the cameras were from news media. There was a moment where he turned around, looked into the lens of our camera, and gave a little smile.
Greg's behavior at the trial only adds to the heartbreak felt by Laura's family.
That if this situation didn't happen, like, I could have had my mom back. She would have been living in my town. She would have been... She would have been here. It's not fair.
How will this trial pan out without evidence of Laura Johnson's body?
This case has had so many unanswered questions. It's had so much heartache with it. And there's no body, there's no murder weapon, there's no evidence that shows he actually killed her.
Two years after Laura Johnson's final moments were captured by a home security camera, a jury in Billings, Montana is set to decide whether her boyfriend, Greg Green, is guilty of murder.
This trial lasted, 2 weeks? Monday through Friday, 8 hours a day. Didn't leave that city hall building for 2 weeks, basically.
That footage was the critical piece in the investigation and in the trial. It was a piece of evidence that the jury actually got to take back with them to deliberations, to view.
Can't escape the silent witness. Can't escape that video surveillance.
Any person with common sense to see all the evidence, and especially the video, would know he was guilty. I just got home the day before, and Steven called and said, hey, they have a verdict already. We're headed back.
The jury was out maybe 2 hours.
You don't know. You put 12 people in a room to make a decision and hope it's the right one.
To the charge of deliberate homicide. Guilty.
Ultimately, he was convicted of deliberate homicide. And he received a sentence of 100 years in the Montana State Prison.
In my 16-year career, this is the first case I've been involved in that went from a welfare check to missing persons to a homicide without a body to a even prosecution of a homicide without a body.
And the fact that the contribution that we had was as impactful as it was, that's where the bittersweet part comes, you know? Had to extend ourselves that much.
Go through something you could never prepare yourself for.
Exactly.
If he didn't do that, then we would still be searching.
One of the key pivotal moments here was the persistence from family. And then Ms. Johnson's son coming to Billings and locating the surveillance footage. And I can only speculate, if that video had not been located or recovered, I'm not sure where we would be now.
Today, Stephen and his brothers are focused on keeping their mother's memory alive.
My mom was a part of my life every single day. I got married last year to my beautiful wife, Casey here. We had our daughter, Eliza, and Eliza's middle name is my mother's name. So her name is Eliza Laura Johnson. Big part of how my mom was as an everyday mother is the ways that I've been able to cope with her loss. So making the meals that she made, having the family dinners, bringing her into my life in those little ways to keep her alive. That's what I do. She's there every time I make dinner,
The only thing I have that I can hear her voice now is April 2018. She called me, but I was at work, and she left me a voicemail to tell me happy birthday. That's the only thing I have to hear her voice.
We still have the fact that we don't know where my mother lies to this day. That we have not been able to bring her home. We haven't had the sense of closure for peace. There's been no funeral, there's been no memorial, there's been nothing. If there's anything that anybody can tell us, if there's anything that sticks out, if there's a piece of property you own, if there's something you can do, if there's something you've seen, just, to please come forward.
I'm hoping this outcome that people come forward with actual real information and it helps us find her and bring her home.
Mom, I'm going to do a couple of videos, and the apartment was in that building over there. Isn't that cool? Really nice. You can come out here and eat your lunch. This is my new hood now. And you come in to the kitchen. And the kitchen is good sized kitchen. Got a bench here.
If Charles did walk out of this apartment, where did he go?
The closest person to us is missing. I'm thinking that someone just has him and he's somewhere. Where is he?
The first time that he ever went to Anna's apartment was the last time he was seen alive.
I remember asking her, why are you not freaking out?
There were some red flags that started to pop up.
They were extremely concerned. They thought maybe something terrible happened.
Charles Butler's final moments, that's not a good way to go.
Autumn 2012. 56-year-old Florida businessman Charles Butler has just moved back to his hometown, New York City.
This is really nice. I love this city.
He would always talk about how New York City is the greatest place on earth. I'm Molly Butler. I'm Chuck Butler's oldest daughter. Originally, my dad was from Queens. He lived there till early 20s. And he said that he went to Florida to visit a friend and ended up meeting my mom. They fell in love pretty quickly. And they ended up getting married after a few years and having the three of us.
After Molly, Charles and his wife Kim welcome Margie and Maxwell. As the family grows, Charles's career takes off.
My dad was definitely a businessman. He owned a pizza shop, and he was actually the first pizza place in Central Florida to start delivery pizza. Then he started doing insurance. He opened up his own insurance company. He just, a great businessman, great with finances. very, very smart. I'm Margie Bolton, and I'm Chuck Butler's middle daughter.
We're in love with architecture in New York City.
His heart was always back in New York. He was always a city boy through and through, for sure.
While Charles's business is growing, in 1997, his personal life is upended when he and his wife Kim decide to divorce.
And then they just separated. Like, they literally got together to have us 3 kids. Like, they just weren't really meant to be together. We would visit my dad on Wednesday nights and every other weekend. He would always try to just make the time that we had the best that it could be. He always made everything fun. One of my favorite memories of all time was a New York vacation. We were on the subway, and my dad starts singing, "Always Look on the Bright Side of Life." And he gets out onto the street.
Ladies and gentlemen, I want you to feel sorry for me, even though I'm down and out.
We were younger at the time. I remember my brother was really embarrassed. Like, "Dad, stop."
My heart's beating.
I'm Maxwell Butler. I am Charles Butler's son and the youngest of 3.
Oh my God.
It would be so embarrassing for us, but looking back on it, it was just a good time.
In 2012, Charles encourages his oldest daughter, Molly, to follow her career ambitions.
My dad was all about living your dreams. Find out what you're passionate about and make that your business. So I knew that I wanted to be a New York City hairstylist. That was my dream since I was very, very young.
Charles gives Molly a push by suggesting they become roommates.
When I was 24, my dad and I found an apartment in New York City.
Okay. I'm on 78.
And the deal was, my dad would come up for 1 weekend out of every month. Well, he was there 3 weeks out of every month.
Charles's part-time residence in New York coincides with another significant turning point.
After he got divorced from my mom, he was never really open to the idea of marriage. But he said, I wanted to find my queen. So he started getting on a bunch of dating websites. He would always make dating websites in New York, even though he lived in Florida.
In the spring, he connects with a woman from Brooklyn named Anna.
My first impression of her was she's super cute. I could totally see why my dad was into her. He was just smitten by her. I had never seen my dad like that before. He was in puppy love.
On September 15th, Charles comes to town for one of his regular visits with his daughter and new girlfriend.
On his way up, he gets into his first class seat and he's taking selfies like, I worked hard and now I'm gonna go play hard, and I happen to get the seat next to me is empty, so I get the whole row to myself. He was just so excited about it. He said, you know, this is the way the whole trip is gonna be, just blessings everywhere.
Charles makes plans to spend Monday night with just Molly.
We just had the best conversation about, wow, we're living in New York City and I'm a New York City hairstylist. And I was in a very, loving, healthy relationship, and he was in a loving, healthy relationship. We were just reflecting on all of it. I didn't know at the time it was going to be my last conversation with him, but looking back on it, it was literally the most perfect conversation we could have had. It was just awesome.
The next day, Tuesday, Charles has plans with Anna for a special evening.
Tuesday, he had messaged me and he said, hey, I'm actually going to go out to Anna's house tonight. We're going to watch a movie. I'm going to sleep out there. She lived in Brighton Beach, Brooklyn. So this was a big deal that he was going to her house for the very first time.
That night, Charles fills Molly in on the date.
So he was messaging me, oh, it's so sweet. I got a home-cooked meal for the first time in forever. We're having a good time. He's like, I got my cantaloupe for the morning. It's great. She's going to go to work, and then I'll come back home, and I'll meet you in the city for lunch tomorrow. I was trying to book one of my flights back to Florida, and for some reason, when I was booking my flight, my credit card wasn't being accepted. So I was asking him, hey, can you buy my flight to Florida? I'll transfer you the money. He said, yeah, absolutely. Remind me in the morning.
The next day, when Molly doesn't hear from him, she texts her dad about the tickets.
And he told me, I'm sorry, I wasn't feeling good. I had a party. And he called me Honey, which my dad had many nicknames for me, and Honey was never one of them. So it didn't really make sense. So it's just like, okay, like, please book it. When I left work that day, I went home and my dad wasn't home. And I was like trying to call him over and over and over, and his phone was dead. I didn't have her number at this point. I didn't know how to get a hold of her, but I also knew that she was the last person that he was with.
The next day, Molly's concern intensifies.
I started getting calls from his employees at the insurance company down in Florida. And they were asking me, we haven't been able to get a hold of your dad. What's going on?
By Friday night, 3 days since she's heard from her dad, Molly is desperate to make contact with Anna.
I find a way to break into my dad's iPad and find Anna's email. So 7 o'clock in the morning on Saturday, I get an email back from her finally, and she said, hey Molly, he left my house on Wednesday morning and broke up with me, and I haven't heard from him since. My dad was head over heels in love with her. He had told me that he was already looking at rings. So at this point, I know something's up. I email her back and I said, my dad is officially missing.
We still hadn't heard from him, and we were extremely concerned.
It was just as if he just vanished.
Investigators zero in on Charles's final moments.
That was the last footage that we had of Charles. He just vanished the next day.
And the focus falls on a seemingly friendly face.
Have you had the locks changed since this?
Since that, no.
But we didn't know what the role was that she played. That's when I really, really got suspicious.
How does a man who is completely content with his life just go missing? The only thing Charles Butler's family knows is that he went on a date with his new girlfriend, Anna, and then abruptly ended their relationship.
I'm talking to her and I say, like, what happened? What was going on? She says, we had dinner on Tuesday night. Everything was great. He spent the night. On Wednesday, I went to work.
According to Anna, that morning, Charles stayed in bed in her apartment.
She said that in the morning we were texting each other, and then by the afternoon I was getting texts from him. And then he just broke up with me for no reason. And I said, oh, can I see the text messages? And she goes, no, I deleted all of them already. And I was like, wait, what? Why did you delete the text? And she said, well, because he broke up with me and I was heartbroken and I didn't want anything to remember him by, so I deleted all the texts. I remember asking her, like, why are you not freaking out? Like, it just felt like she was so disconnected from it, and it just felt weird. I could feel something was off, and I couldn't figure out what it was. And I said, I'm going to call the cops. We need to find my dad. 2 cops showed up. They basically just start taking the information. And I'm telling them every detail that I can give him. His phone was dead for like 3 days. I show them the text messages. He was spelling things weird. Certain people will say like lowercase OK, and that's how my dad would say it. But this was capital O, period, capital K, period. So just the way that he was texting was weird. It was very obvious that it wasn't him.
I am Christopher Heath. I'm the investigative reporter at WFTV Channel 9 in Orlando, Florida. We covered the disappearance of Charles Butler. NYPD comes in, they look at it. There's no evidence of foul play. There's no tracks saying something suspicious is happening, apart from the fact that nobody's heard from him and the cell phone text messages are a little off-putting. New York City is a giant place, and NYPD have a lot on their plate. They say, we're not throwing up roadblocks and shutting down, the boroughs till we find him, because we just don't have enough here pointing us in that direction.
They kind of were just like, a bunch of people in the city do this all the time. He's probably just hanging out at the beach, trying to just like get away from his life. And I was trying to tell them like, no, something is happening. Like, this is not okay. This is out of character. One of them, I guess I had pulled on his heartstrings just enough. And he said, listen, I'm going to put out a report. They're not going to actively look for your dad, but I'm going to do what I can and figure something out for you. There's not much that we can do, but I'm going to do what I can do to help you.
Despite the detective's assurances, Molly's concern is rising.
And I started freaking out at this point. The closest person to us is missing, like literally just vanished out of her life with no answers.
Like, he doesn't go off the radar. Like, with his kids, he doesn't ignore us. He doesn't take a day or two, no matter how much he parties. When it comes to his kids, like, he's always just there. Something just didn't feel right.
After a few days had passed, my sisters told me that, they still hadn't heard from him and that they were extremely concerned and that they thought maybe something terrible happened.
Feeling like they have hit a dead end, the Butler children resolve to take matters into their own hands.
We decided that we were going to have to go the route of a private investigator at this point.
I'm Keith Freeman. I'm a private investigator. I had just come back to Florida from a trip to Central America. I was on my way home when I got the call. I literally turned my car around and booked a flight and went straight up to New York that night.
5 days have passed since anyone has heard from Charles. Freeman begins downloading with Molly.
And I'm telling him all the details. He's like, wow, you did a lot of the legwork for me. Thank you. One of the first things that he had said to me, no more contact with Anna whatsoever.
Freeman then digs into the police theory that Charles may have willfully disappeared.
The first step is we check to determine whether Charles had booked a flight through his office, to check his billing records on his credit cards, and found nothing to corroborate the fact that he had made any additional travel plans.
There was no activity anywhere whatsoever. We had all kept trying to call his phone. It was off. We couldn't get through.
With no evidence to support that Charles left on his own accord, Freeman sets out to find him.
The first step is to get as close to where Charles was in his last known location. I was planning to go straight to his girlfriend Anna's house, which is where he was last seen and where the children last believed he was.
When our dad went missing, the last that we had heard was that he was with Anna, so suspicions definitely arose. The first time that he ever went back to her apartment was the last time he was seen alive.
The private investigator hired by the Butler family is on his way to interview the last person to see Charles alive, his girlfriend, Anna.
We went straight to Anna's apartment. We noticed a couple cameras that were located in the apartment building and on the exterior of the apartment building, but we didn't know who owned those cameras and whether they were operational. Anna appeared to be worried about what had happened to Charles, so she was more than happy to talk to us. She described the night that she spent with Charles as perfect. According to Anna, they were in love. So she was extremely concerned about what had happened to him and where he might have gone. No reason to think at that time that there was anything untoward.
But while interacting with Anna, something catches Freeman's eye.
When I entered the apartment, one of the first things I noticed in the hallway on a shelf was a man's watch. Didn't appear to be Charles Butler's watch.
Keith is struck by how flashy the watch is, which doesn't seem to fit Charles's laid-back style.
Keith kept me updated through the whole process, and he had asked her, and she said that it was her ex's watch.
Anna's ex is a 46-year-old Russian immigrant named Mikhail Chernayev.
I asked Anna about her ex-husband. They shared a child together, but they had been divorced for a long time, and Mikhail had been remarried, had another baby. Mikhail had 3 vehicles that he parked in the courtyard behind Anna's residence. So they still maintained enough of a relationship for him to be able to access the parking spaces and use them for his work and his personal cars.
After visiting Anna, Freeman reaches out to the NYPD detectives that offered Molly help. They inform him that they, too, have visited Anna's building. They've discovered that the security cameras there were installed by a resident, and they are working to identify the owner and secure the footage.
Keith kept kind of running into these things where he didn't have access to stuff, only the cops did. And since he wasn't a cop, he wasn't able to do some of the stuff. So we kind of had this like stop and go.
Then Molly gets a call from a friend of her father's in Florida.
She told me that a month before he went missing, Anna's ex-husband called my dad from Anna's phone and basically said, "She's my woman, stay away from her." It was just the one threatening call, and nobody really knew about it.
Based upon the fact that Charles had received what he believed was a threatening phone call from Anna's ex-husband, I was definitely suspicious that Mikhail was involved in Chuck's disappearance.
It's now 2 weeks since the Butlers have heard from their father, and the weight of the investigation is taking a toll.
I've heard people describe anxiety attacks, but I had never suffered from one up until this point. And it would just take me out. Like I would get like tunnel vision, I would hyperventilate, I'd be on my knees like crying. It was just literally like survival mode. The way I coped was with alcohol, and I completely numbed out. And had I not met my now husband after my dad went missing, like I truly believe I would be dead today.
Then, on October 4th, 16 days after Charles went missing, the NYPD gains access to the footage from Anna's building and share the material with Freeman. Does this footage contain clues about Charles Butler's final moments?
There was video footage of Charles and Anna entering the front entrance of the apartment complex at about 7:30 on a Tuesday evening. They went shopping, came back, couple just entering the building normally.
At about 7:30 a.m. the following morning, they spot something else.
We have video evidence of Anna on her cell phone outside the residence, and she finally had to go into work.
Freeman continues watching the footage from the rest of the day.
There is no video of Chuck ever leaving the apartment building after Charles and Anna had last entered her apartment. That was the last footage that we had of Charles.
We know he walked into her apartment. We know he is not seen walking out. What happened?
He just vanished the next day.
The footage does, however, reveal a potential clue.
One of the video cameras clearly showed Mikhail's car being parked in the early morning hours.
Hours later, after Anna leaves, the van pulls out.
He was watching the apartment and waiting for her to leave.
Moments later, a camera in the back of Anna's building reveals something else.
The video also captured Mikhail himself coming and going in the courtyard behind Anna's residence. We were able to see his work van leaving and returning on 2 occasions that morning.
While footage from behind the building is obscured, Mikhail's movements in the courtyard, combined with the fact that Charles never walked out the front door, lead investigators to a startling conclusion.
NYPD believed that Charles had met with foul play and that Mikhail assaulted Charles. And the last time that he left in that van, Charles' body was in the van. The NYPD was seeking search warrants on the vehicles specifically that were in the courtyard.
But days later, disaster strikes.
Once in a 100-year event swooped in. Superstorm Sandy struck.
The storm submerges 250,000 vehicles, including Chernyav's.
Sandy washed away a significant portion of any evidence that would have been necessary to connect Mikhail to Charles Butler's disappearance. It was devastating to the investigation.
When potential evidence linking Mikhail Chernyav to the murder of Charles Butler is destroyed in Superstorm Sandy, it's a crushing blow to the investigation.
Superstorm Sandy was devastating to New York and the people in New York. It makes it really challenging for the NYPD to be able to follow up on anything. They were at a standstill on the case for several months.
5 months into the investigation, Freeman knows the likelihood that Charles is alive is slim.
The words that Keith had used, it's like, your dad's not coming back. Like, he's officially, like, gone. I still can't tell you any answers, but we do know that he's gone.
In my teenage years, my dad and I would just kind of butt heads, I think. Like, we didn't always have the best relationship. I remember the last trip he made me get out of the car and give him a hug, which was very unusual because we didn't do that a lot. But we hugged and told each other we loved each other, and that was the last time I saw him.
Mikhail Chernyav is still the NYPD's lead suspect, but there's no evidence to charge him with murder.
NYPD cared about this case, but he was a missing person. They didn't have any evidence to really lead them to anything else.
There's not the physical evidence. There's not a pool of blood somewhere. There's no body.
In the face of a stalled investigation, Keith Freeman pitches an idea to the Butler children.
We decided to talk to the media in hopes of gaining additional information about what had happened to Charles.
The private investigator had gone, I think, as far as he could and asked if we'd be willing to take a look at this case.
If Charles did walk out of this apartment, where did he go? He didn't have a car in New York City. He would have either had to take a taxi or public transportation.
Where the trail for us goes cold is once he arrives at Anna's apartment. We needed to go see some of these places. We needed to try and get an interview with Anna since she was the last one to see him alive. She decides, yeah, she'd like to talk to us. Let's see if she'll shine some light on these last couple of hours.
And we loved each other, and we wanted to spend our life together.
Charles and Anna went to her apartment. The next morning, Anna says she gave Charles a key to the apartment and left for work. That would be the last time she or anyone else who knew Charles Butler would see him alive.
I gave him the key. He closed upper lock. So it means that he left.
Have you had the locks changed since this?
Since that, no.
Why not get your locks changed? But she hadn't. It hadn't even crossed her mind. Later on in the interview, I asked about when she got back, had he made the bed? And she couldn't remember. And just some of her reactions were, to me, there were some red flags that started to pop up. We knew Mikhail was a character within this larger story. When I asked about Mikhail, she seemed to dismiss the idea that Mikhail was somehow involved. She said, he's not behind this.
As Christopher Heath is reporting his story, another news organization reveals surprising information about Anna and Mikhail.
We found out that she basically started dating her ex again. That's when I really, really got suspicious. We didn't think that maybe she was involved in what happened, but she might have been involved in protecting Mikhail from getting caught.
Christopher Heath's report airs in late February of 2013.
The next day, we had a different response from the NYPD. We had the involvement of the state police. We had the involvement of senior detectives in Brooklyn and Manhattan.
With intrigue swirling around Anna, the NYPD turns to a specialist.
I'm Konstantin Papadopoulos, a detective with the New York City Police Department, assigned to investigate the Charles Butler missing persons case. We really wanted to know, was Anna involved in any way of Mr. Butler's disappearance, or if she had prior knowledge of it or any of that. We wanted Anna polygraphed.
Eight months after Charles Butler disappeared, an NYPD detective is interrogating his girlfriend, Anna.
I needed to find out if she had any prior knowledge of Mr. Butler's disappearance or if she had any involvement in his disappearance. So when I spoke to Anna, her demeanor was very cooperative. Anna told me she wanted to find out what happened to him as well. I asked about her ex-husband, Mikhail. She met Mikhail in Russia. They also have a son in common, but they did have their differences. According to Anna, he was a very jealous person, questioned her a lot about different things, even though they were not together. He was still jealous. During my course of the interview with Anna, she didn't believe Mikhail had something to do with his disappearance, but you don't know what's going on in someone's head, you know? At the end of the polygraph, she came up, no deception indicated. She had no involvement in Charles Butler's disappearance, so she was in the dark.
With no additional insight or evidence, the investigation is at a standstill. But the following day, the NYPD gets an unexpected call from officials in upstate New York.
There was a fisherman whose boat had broken down in a infrequently traveled area. The fisherman got out of his boat near the shoreline and stumbled upon a body.
When the body was found upstate New York, that DNA was matched with the DNA that the case detective submitted. Then they could ultimately say, yes, this is Charles Butler that was found by the lost fisherman.
After 8 months, Charles Butler has been found.
Like, I remember getting the phone call. I was still in New York. It was more like brutal and gory than we could.
For investigators, the discovery of the body is the first piece of solid evidence in the case.
Charles is found under suspicious circumstances. So now the investigation is going to change. So at this point, the detective calls me up and asks if I could polygraph Mikhail. He voluntarily came, yes. He was very cooperative. He seemed enthusiastic to help. He's a middle-aged man, medium to large build, brown hair, balding a little bit.
Without revealing that Charles's body has been found, Papadopoulos begins his routine.
Whenever you interrogate somebody that's suspected of a crime, it's a long process. First off, with Mikhail, I built some rapport with him. We sat down, we spoke about common things, you know, what he did for a living, where is he from in Russia, when did he come to the United States, questions like that. Just try to build rapport and see where his mindset's at for the polygraph later on. I asked Mikhail the regular questions that any investigator would ask him. Do you know him? Have you ever met him? Mikhail denied that he knew Charles. He explained to me that he knew that Anna was dating somebody, but he didn't know who it was.
Then Papadopoulos suddenly produces a document, a map of the exact area where Charles's body was found.
The demeanor that he had quickly changed. He was very nervous. At this point, everything came crashing around Mikhail.
When confronted with a map of the location where Charles Butler's body was discovered, lead suspect Mikhail Chernayev begins changing his story.
I'm sure Mikhail thought in his mind that, okay, as long as they don't find Mr. Butler, I'm going to be okay. But Mr. Butler was found, and then everything came crashing around Mikhail.
Before the polygraph begins, Mikhail begins speaking freely about Charles and Anna.
Upon questioning by the NYPD, he confessed that he was in love with Anna, and he was jealous over anybody having a relationship with her. That in his mind, he went to the apartment to confront Charles about the relationship.
Mikhail said he walked over to Anna's place. After he observed her leaving for work, approximately 7:30 a.m., he knew that Charles would be home. Knocked on the door. A confrontation ensued.
According to Mikhail, he pushed his way into the apartment. Charles screamed at him. Mikhail asked him to be quiet. When he didn't, Mikhail punched him in the face and knocked him down. He said that Charles still would not stop screaming. Mikhail took a knife from the kitchen counter, stabbed Charles, and suffocated him. Mikhail's explanation was that he was possessed by a demon.
We never got to the polygraph examination because during the pretest interview, Mikhail confessed to Mr. Butler's demise. Mikhail told me that he didn't want Anna to find out that he had any involvement in this. So he took Charles Butler's body to a location upstate where he used to go on vacation, a secluded area. And that's where he dumped Charles Butler's body. Charles Butler's final moments, that's not a good way to go.
Papadopoulos then questions Mikhail about the bizarre messages that were sent to Anna and the Butler children after Charles was dead.
Charles Butler's cell phone had a lock feature on it. So I asked Mikhail, I go, how did you use Mr. Butler's cell phone? Because you were texting people. Mikhail clearly said it was easy. I just took the SIM card out and put it in my phone, and I was able to use the phone. So I asked him, well, why did you do this to Mikhail? And he said to trick everybody.
Mikhail is arrested for the murder of Charles Butler. The following day, investigators go in search of additional evidence to bolster their case.
The NYPD fluoroceled looking for blood samples, and were able to find a very small drop of blood in the kitchen that matched Charles Butler.
Chernayev is indicted on charges of second-degree murder. Months later, he recants his confession, and the case moves to trial. And again, the woman at the center of the deadly love triangle becomes an object of curiosity.
She got asked to testify for both sides. You could tell, like, she was in a really weird position. I watched her face when they showed his confession video, and it was the first time she ever heard it. Like, it dawned on her. It took a year and a half for her to even connect it in her own mind that he was the one that killed my dad. Like, he did it. And what he was telling her at the time was that he was in jail in place of her. He told her that they were trying to arrest her for killing my dad, and he's taking the blame for her. I feel like she was innocent in it. I feel like she was innocent almost to a fault, but that she was tricked by him too.
On September 29th, 2016, almost 4 years from when Charles was killed, there is a verdict.
A jury comes back and finds him guilty of murder. The judge handed down a sentence of 25 years to life.
With the trials behind us, I felt like we were finally able to create our own closure, if you will. The grieving process is something I still struggle with. I'm grateful for the time that we did have together because he raised me to be the man I am today.
Monday night we had that really awesome conversation. I think that trip he was the most excited I had ever seen. And I think part of it was because, of course, he's coming back to the city that he loves.
Saturday afternoon in the city, street festival. How do you like this neighborhood, huh?
And he was going to see the woman that he fell in love with and get ready for a really epic weekend in New York.
The last time that he had texted me, I was supposed to go get air in my tires. He had texted me, like, make sure you get air in your tires. My dad was my best friend, and any question that I ever asked was never off the table. What you couldn't see in yourself, like my dad could see it in you, he was our best friend. Like, he was my closest friend. The bond was there.
She would a party and she would dance.
When she went to the bar that night, that was the last time we seen her.
She's riding into the night with a mystery man on a motorcycle.
We knew we needed a break. Who is this individual?
I know my daughter. She would contact me.
Is she alive somewhere needing to be rescued?
We started to find more what we believed were human remains.
Somebody knows something and you're not telling, and we need to know.
October 12th, 2012. Jacksonville, Florida. For Sherry Prather, life can be summed up with 3 words: family, fun, and Harleys.
My mom, she was definitely a free spirit. She wasn't one for rules. She did have a lot of friends from like a lot of different backgrounds. Mom was very attracted to Harleys. She loved motorcycles, so anytime like she's seen one, she wanted to go for a ride.
She loved a party and she would dance. And she loved to sing karaoke. She could sing really good. She had a beautiful voice. She sounded just like Stevie Nicks. She was not just my daughter, she was my best friend.
Norma Ellis is a young single mom when her daughter Sherry is born.
They laid her on my chest. It was just a shock, like our heart became one. And like they just beat in rhythm together. That just stays with me all the time because it was just like a jolt. It was like we just become one.
Norma strives to give Sherry everything she missed in her own upbringing.
I didn't have a real good childhood. We didn't have a loving family. And I wanted her to be raised to know what it felt like to be wanted, big Christmas and stuff. I tried to cram all that in for her. Anything, if she said she wanted it, if I had to work 2 shifts, I was going to get up for work.
Sherry's childhood is filled with love, but she also has to grow up fast.
She was very caring. If I was in bed sick, she'd come in there every 15 or 20 minutes and put a cold rag on my head, and she always took care of me. I didn't have any help but her, and she was young. We had the tightest relationship, and it was my birthday. She brought me roses. Yeah, she brought me roses.
Like her mother, Sherry falls in love at a young age, and by her early 20s, she's married with 2 baby girls.
That's her, holding one of the kids. The young mother, that's her husband. That was her husband. It didn't last too long.
I think at the time, like when she had us, she was so young, she wasn't ready to be a mom, so she kind of grew up with us.
After 5 years of marriage, the relationship falls apart, and Sherry finds herself a single mom. She moves in with Norma for support.
It was just the four of us, all women. We were one. She was close to her girls. She liked the freedom to come and go, and she knew that I was going to be there to take care of the girls.
But after her divorce, despite her mother's support and unwavering love, Sherry hits one rough patch after another.
I've watched my mom go through like a lot of bad relationships where they felt like they could put their hands on her and stuff like that. They tried to control her, which only made her pretty much rebel even more.
Through years of abuse and struggle, Sherry turns to alcohol and drugs to numb the pain.
Her addiction was probably her biggest battle. She battled with that for a very long time.
By the time Sherry is 30 years old, she manages to fight off her demons.
She was clean and sober. She didn't even drink or anything anymore, but she was still a free spirit.
In 2012, after years of sobriety, Sherry is now a 43-year-old mother of 2 adult daughters. Her youngest, Mandy, is 22 and still lives with Sherry and Norma. By now, Sherry has been clean long enough to feel comfortable hanging out with friends at a local bar without drinking. And on October 12th, she makes plans to meet up with some friends at a place called Boots and Bottles.
It's a little hole in the wall, more like bikers and like the older type of crowd.
She said, I am going to walk. I said, get in the car. I will take you rather than you walk because it's a real bad road. And it was dark. It was 10 or 11 o'clock.
So me and Grandma actually took Mom up there. When she went to the bar that night, she was supposed to just hang out. And that was the last time we seen her.
By the following morning, when Sherry hasn't returned home, her mother grows concerned.
I knew that she was missing because she did not call me. I knew something was wrong the minute she didn't come home.
When a day passes with still no word from Sherry, Norma and Mandy decide to act.
So Monday I told Grandma, I just have a feeling like we need to go to the police station. But because of like her background and how old she was, they really didn't want to file a missing persons report. So of course, my grandma being who she is, there was an uproar in there.
And they kept trying to tell me, she's a grown woman, we're not filing. I said, oh yeah, oh yes you are.
Missing person cases, sometimes you hear, you have 24 hours to be reported missing. That's not really the case. Oftentimes, it's the circumstances surrounding the individual. Is this uncommon for them? Or are there foul play, signs of a struggle, something like that?
With Norma's insistence, the police take the missing persons report. But they are not overly concerned yet and don't immediately begin an investigation.
We don't quite have enough to where you feel confident that something did occur that would cause the missing persons team to react immediately as opposed to not.
But 3 days after Norma last saw Sherry walking into the Boots and Bottles bar, she's convinced otherwise.
You try to go to sleep and wake up in the morning and put your feet on the floor and you think, oh gosh, that was a horrible dream, and you start to walk down the hall and you say, oh no, she's not in there. I know my daughter and I need some help. Somebody's holding her captive or she's laying hurt somewhere. something is wrong.
A relentless mother drives the investigation forward.
I checked all the tips, pleaded on the internet, please come forward, please come forward.
It was really incredible to see the mother's strength and will to just keep going.
But it's a long wait before investigators can confront their prime suspect.
We were fairly confident that a confession was not going to occur with this individual because he has told so many lies.
He stands up the minute they walk out of the room and he bangs his head on the interview table.
Three days after Sherry Prather was last seen, her mother Norma is still struggling to have Jacksonville police take her daughter's missing persons case seriously.
They kept saying, she's an adult, we can't. I said, I want it filed. I will go downtown to whoever I have to. I know my daughter. She would contact me.
And eventually, Norma's entreaties pay off. On October 15th, detectives start their investigation at the bar where Sherry was last seen.
Boots and Bottles is a small establishment. It's just an old-fashioned place to grab a beer in the neighborhood of Ocean Way. But it was popular at the time.
It's a small little dive bar is how I would describe it. Particularly people that ride motorcycles would kind of hang out there.
Sherry Prather was a regular there. That's what we had heard from people. It was kind of the gathering spot for her and her friends.
Investigators first talked to the bar's owner to see if he noticed anything unusual on the night that Sherry vanished.
We're looking, what firsthand knowledge does he have? What secondhand information does he have from his employees or people that were there? So he did tell our detectives that he knew Sherry Prather was there. She was there with a group of friends, and that's all that he could really provide. He was able to say, hey, these were some other people that may have been here at this time. That gave us a direction to go in.
Investigators also searched the bar itself for any clues.
Detectives searched Boots and Bottles for any type of physical evidence, including video footage, anything that could show Sherry.
But unfortunately, the bar has no surveillance cameras, and detectives can find no other evidence of any value. They know they need to find potential witnesses, so they begin reaching out to the bar patrons mentioned by the owner, and any other regulars they can find who might have been there the night Sherry disappeared.
They said she was there with her friends, and that's when she decides to leave. Little did they know that was going to be the last time that they saw her.
Sherry left in the wee hours of the morning toward closing time. And we did find there were some local gentlemen that openly articulated as a motorcycle club.
They were motorcycle gang members, the outlaws.
And we knew the members of that club, didn't even want to speak to the police.
The detectives learned that the biker gang is listed by the FBI as an organized crime ring, linked to illegal activities, including drug trafficking, prostitution, extortion, and money laundering.
So we made contact with those members. Eventually we knew much of that would be a dead end. We weren't going to get much information from those folks.
Their presence at the location from which Sherry disappeared is worrying, but police find no evidence connecting her and the biker gang. Days pass with no new leads, and the case seems to be hitting a wall. At the same time, word of Sherry's disappearance catches the attention of local news reporters.
At the time, I was a field reporter and police did not have a lot of information to go on. So certainly it was a mysterious case. I wanted to talk to Norma. I went to her house and knocked and knocked and knocked, and eventually she came to the door, and you could tell she was disheveled. She doesn't know where her daughter is. Is she alive somewhere needing to be rescued? Obviously, she's going through all of these emotions. And there's a lot of family members that would say, no, we're not able to talk right now. We're too distraught. There's people that would slam the door in my face. Norma came out and did an interview with me.
That was my only child. She was my whole life.
So now she's pleading that someone knows something.
Every night I hear her calling me to unlock the door to let her in. And I can't take it anymore.
I remember she showed a picture of Sherry, and that was the first time we really got to see a picture of this woman who was missing, besides what had been released by police. She had a flyer, and she did everything she could.
If you don't get out and help, your case is not going to get solved. It's just going to be shoved to the bottom. I went out, everybody at the bar, it gave me information. I checked all the tips. We pleaded on the internet, please come forward, please come forward. We did a lot of posting on Facebook, just about every day, pleading, any tip. I just want some information.
If there was a 1% chance that Sherry was alive, Norma was going to use that 1% chance as motivation to keep going. And it was really incredible to see the mother's strength and will to just keep going.
It's been 3 weeks since Sherry Prather vanished from a Jacksonville bar called Boots and Bottles. Missing persons detectives are failing to gain traction in the investigation.
Obviously, detectives are going to have to keep some things close to the vest. They were struggling, and they were frustrated too at the time. They were having trouble finding leads. So, it did become a whodunit.
But Sherry's mother, Norma, and her daughter, Mandy, refused to let the investigation wither.
Me and Grandma actually drove around and went into a lot of bad houses and bad areas trying to find her, just to see if they've seen her, if they talked to her.
And told the people at gas stations that looked like dopers, you know, you seen my daughter? I never was afraid.
She's in high crime areas. She's talking to people that could be perceived as dangerous. She's doing everything to find her daughter, and she wasn't going to stop.
We put up posters every morning, please help. There was a lot of witness. Somebody knows something and you're not telling, and we need to know.
I vividly remember begging with her to please stand down and not place herself in a situation where harm could come to her. I spoke to Miss Ellis, reassuring her that we were doing everything we can and that we weren't forgetting her case.
We did advise her numerous times to let the officers and the detectives in our office conduct the investigation, all the while knowing that I would probably be doing the same thing she was doing if I was in her shoes.
"30 days into the investigation, police finally get their first solid lead. On November 12, 2012, Teresa Lennox, a childhood friend of Sherry's daughter Mandy, contacts detectives, claiming to have information.
Can you state your name? My name is Teresa Lennox.
Investigators bring her in for an interview.
When I turned on the news and I saw the missing persons report for Sherry Prather, I broke down. I got really upset. I was crying loudly. My uncle came out of his bedroom. That's my Uncle Jack. Uncle Jack. Yeah.
Teresa explains that she has been staying with her uncle for a few weeks while she looks for an apartment. He is a regular at Boots and Bottles.
When Jack came out of his bedroom, he asked me what was going on, and I pointed at the TV, and he said, well, who is that? I said, well, that's Sherry Prather. I said, that's my, really good friend of mine's mother. And he goes, really? He said, that's the one that they've been putting up pictures of all over town. I said, yeah, it is. He said, well, I might know what happened to her. And he said, well, all I know is that supposedly this biker guy killed her over money and dumped her on Braddock Road. That's what he said. That's all I know. And he left it at that.
Detectives press Teresa for the name of the biker. She insists she knows nothing. She says she hasn't seen her Uncle Jack for several days, and investigators are unable to locate him. Meanwhile, another team from the Missing Persons Unit is deployed to Braddock Road, the place Teresa claims Sherry's body was dumped.
It is in a very rural part of the city of Jacksonville. It's a heavily wooded area. It's not a well-lit area. It's a local road.
The investigative team searches through rough terrain, pulling back branches and combing through tall grass. They find bone fragments, but at first glance, they appear to be from an animal.
There were animal carcasses, and that particular location of the woods is known to be a dump site for hunters. They dump deer, hog, wild hog carcasses, and there's quite a few scavengers out there. It was at that time that we made the decision to contact one of our dog handlers who has a dog that specializes in locating human remains.
The highly trained dog gets to work, scouring the discarded bones spread across the field. Then, he signals his handler that he's found something.
The dog located what they believed were human remains. He immediately contacted the on-call homicide team, which was my team, and we responded to the scene. We started to find more what we believed were human remains scattered throughout the woods. There was a potential body that could be Sherry.
Days after Sherry Prather was last seen, a tip leads detectives investigating her disappearance to a rugged piece of land in Jacksonville, Florida, where they have found human remains.
We blocked off a large section, shut that area down, and then brought in teams of evidence technicians, or crime scene unit detectives, to assist us in literally combing the entire woods, from the roadway all the way into the woods, which took several days. We located some clothing, some shoes, small piece of jewelry. With great assistance from the K-9, we were able to recover all human remains.
The Office of the Medical Examiner here in Jacksonville were able to locate some living x-rays of Sherry Prather and compare them to the deceased remains of Sherry Prather, and those bones did confirm it was in fact her.
We were all actually at my grandma's house, and they called, and they told us over the phone that they had found remains.
I felt relieved that they had found her, but the thought of animals eating her and taking her was the hardest part for me to take. I thought I was going to die. And I thought, this can't be real. This can't be real.
Once they confirmed that it was her. Just the thought of it was just pieces, wasn't even like all of her, is I think what truly broke our family.
Homicide detectives take over the case, but they know they face a tough task. Given the condition of Sherry's remains, determining how she died will be difficult.
We decided early on to reach out to an expert, a forensic anthropologist. We knew she was an expert at analyzing bones and determining how they were broken, if they're broken, whether they were shot with a firearm, whether they were stabbed.
The forensic anthropologist gets to work, decoding the secrets Sherry's remains hold.
While that is going on, we're sending detectives to start backtracking. We already know she went missing at Boots and Bottles.
Investigators know Boots and Bottles has no surveillance cameras, but they hope a nearby business might. They go back and canvass the strip mall. They discover that a nearby cell phone store does have a camera, and it points in the direction of the bar's parking lot.
When we watched the video to see if there was anything, it clearly showed Sherry Prather walking out to an individual who was standing by a motorcycle. She gets on that motorcycle, and then they leave the establishment with Sherry on the back as a passenger.
Detectives know they are witnessing Sherry Prather's final moments.
It was mysterious. It's not great video. It's not high quality. It's dark. It would be difficult to identify anyone's facial features from it, but it shows she's riding into the night with a mystery man on a motorcycle leaving a bar.
It's their first look at the person who may be responsible for Sherry's death.
Is this some sort of a motorcycle gang? Is there some bigger criminal activity here? Are we dealing with a serial killer? There's definitely an uneasiness in the neighborhood. And this is not a neighborhood that's immune from crime.
As detectives try to identify the man in the video, they get word from the forensic anthropologist that she reached a conclusion on Sherry's cause of death.
When she found a semicircle beveling in a vertebrae, that absolutely confirmed to us that Sherry Prather was in fact shot.
But detectives have nothing pointing to the identity of her killer.
We knew we needed a break. Who is this individual?
Detectives turn to the public for help, releasing the video of Sherry Prather's final moments to the media. As the video hits the airwaves, tips start pouring in. And one call in particular stands out. It's from a woman named Samantha Johnson, who claims to know the identity of the man seen with Sherry on the video.
We had her come down to homicide.
Today is November 14th, approximately 6:26 p.m. And can you just state your name for me?
Samantha Burleson Johnson.
You saw a news story regarding a missing person, right?
Yes, sir.
And on that news story, there was a video of a man and a woman on a bicycle leaving somewhere.
Yes, sir.
Did you recognize the person on that motorcycle?
Yes, sir.
And who did you recognize that person to be?
Johnny Wayne Johnson.
Surveillance video has revealed Sherry Prather's final moments, riding on the back of an unidentified man's motorcycle. Now, a witness has come forward claiming to know the identity of the biker in the video.
And who did you recognize that person to be?
Johnny Wayne Johnson.
Samantha Johnson is Johnny Wayne's wife. They're still currently married, but not living together. They're separated.
In addition to identifying her estranged husband, Samantha tells investigators that she also has information about what happened to Sherry that night.
Okay, what do you say about the girl that was on the back of the motorcycle?
He took her to somewhere off Trout River Boulevard, Braddock Road, and dropped her off.
And at that point, he shot her?
Yes, sir. He said he didn't have enough time to move the female, so he just dragged her into the woods.
Johnny had a conversation with her as to what occurred that evening, proved that he, in fact, killed Sherry, and more importantly, before her body was ever located. He gave very specific information of where he placed the body, and she was able to provide that information.
Detectives begin a deep dive into their new prime suspect, and it's eye-opening.
He had built a character of himself with the local community, and they were truly scared of the guy. But we worked with our intelligence unit, which is the unit that oversees and monitors all the various motorcycle gangs in and around the region, and we had no indication that he was a gang member. The guy had told quite a few stories to build up his presence.
Detectives find Johnny Johnson's address and rush to the location, ready for anything. To their surprise, he calmly welcomes them.
He admitted, he picked her up at the bar, and he took her and dropped her off at a house. We actually got him to show us the house that she was dropped off at.
But detectives are suspicious of Johnny's version of events, and when they interview the owners of the house, they hear a different story.
We actually were able to determine that nobody ever came by their house. They don't know Sherry Prather. They don't know Johnny Wayne Johnson. That simply didn't occur.
Detectives suspect that Johnny Johnson killed Sherry Prather, but his estranged wife's statement isn't enough to arrest him. They need solid proof.
In a case where you have very little physical evidence, there's no DNA, there's no murder weapon, there's not an intact body, there's no eyewitnesses, we needed more evidence. We asked Sergeant Farhat, his team, to continue to pursue evidence.
That is difficult. Letting them walk out that door makes the hair on the back of your neck stand up when you're like, my God, we know this guy did it. Let's be patient. Time's on our side. We're going to continue and work this case to the very end.
But weeks, then months go by without the homicide team able to find the proof it needs.
Successfully convicting him requires us to prove our case beyond and to the exclusion of every reasonable doubt. So we continue the investigation to the frustration of us all.
Then, Samantha Johnson, also frustrated that her estranged husband is still a free man, agrees to wear a wire to help with the investigation.
It was a detective that was investigating a missing persons case.
Yeah.
Who discovered it off of a tip.
But isn't that the place that you said all this happened?
Like I said, I ain't just...
But what really happened?
It is what it is. Right now I don't want to really get into it until it's over with, if you understand what I'm saying.
Okay, fair enough.
Samantha is unable to provoke a confession, but she does have another lead to offer the investigators. She tells them she's learned that Johnny had a girlfriend named Jordan Paris, and she's heard through the grapevine that she may have helped him dispose of Sherry's body.
We actually brought her downtown to the homicide office and conducted an interview.
Johnny, who is John Wayne,
Craig Johnson. Yeah, her boy. Yeah.
She was not completely forthcoming. She did admit pieces that Johnny went out that night. She knew something happened, but was terrified to tell us.
I'm afraid of what will happen if he knows. I don't. He just kept bringing stories up.
Of what?
And some other girl had gotten smart with someone of power.
Mm-hmm.
And they were either going to take care of it or the girl boyfriend had to take care of it. That was a member of the club.
Take care of it as in what?
Beat her.
But investigators continue pressing Jordan for information, confronting her about claims that she helped move Sherry's body.
Obviously, information that was provided that said that you assisted him in moving a body or bodies with your PT Cruiser is inaccurate?
What? No.
Okay, so it is inaccurate.
Yes.
Okay. Your vehicle has never had any human remains in it?
No human remains, no.
We took possession of her car, got a warrant, and we went through every square inch of that car forensically. There was no physical evidence in that car that indicated that Sherry was ever in that vehicle.
Jordan Paris is cleared of any involvement with the disposal of the body, and detectives are no closer to finding the physical evidence they need. Now, they're forced to wonder if their main witness against Johnny, his estranged wife Samantha, is telling them the truth, or if she has ulterior motives for implicating him in a murder.
They were in the process of separating. Was she fabricating these types of statements by him? If she's jealous of the new girlfriend, we knew we needed a break. We needed a witness or witnesses that sure may have been close to the defendant, but had no motive to lie.
The detective said, we've got one shot is all we have, because they could not find the gun. To put this murder charge on him, we have to have more evidence. And I said, I cannot take this anymore.
The break they need eludes the detectives, and for 4 years, there are no new leads. Then, in 2016, a man named Mike Carroll calls police, saying he's been too frightened of Johnny Johnson to say anything, but has finally found the courage to speak up. He tells investigators that on the night of the murder, he received a phone call from Johnny.
It was the wee hours, 4 or 5 in the morning, and Johnny Wayne Johnson told him he messed up and he needed some help cleaning something up. He told him he had dumped Sherry in the woods, that he wanted help finding ways to hide the remains. Of course, Michael Carroll refused.
So that was the critical piece, the final piece.
After 4 years investigating the murder of Sherry Prather, authorities have finally found the witness they need. On November 18, 2016, armed with the account of a man who says he was asked to help dispose of Sherry's body, investigators bring Johnny Johnson in for a critical round of questioning.
Our goal is simple, and that's to get a confession. So we brought him in to homicide.
Johnny, do you remember a detective talking to you 4 years ago about the girl that was missing from Boots and Bottles?
Yes.
Yeah.
And I took him to where I dropped her off at.
Do you remember her?
Yeah. I've been keeping up with the story in the hopes that y'all catch the person who does it.
Now, we were fairly confident that a confession probably was not going to occur with this individual because he has told so many lies, but we still tried.
Don't know.
being honest, Johnny,
Yeah.
but you got to explain your side of the story.
And I have been. I dropped her off on Trout River.
But you didn't.
I did.
You took her to Braddock Road.
No, I don't know about Braddock Road.
Yes, you do, Johnny. It's right there. It's right there. You've been down it several times.
As the detectives started presenting him with the case and questioning him of what occurred, they said, look, we know you're lying.
I done told you.
That's not the whole story.
It is the whole story. That's all I know, and I didn't do it. You can believe what you want to believe. I did not do it. I swear on my father's grave.
It's denials. I didn't tell him that. I didn't tell my girlfriend that. I didn't tell my wife that version. I didn't tell her anything. It was a multitude of denials throughout his interview.
Can I go home?
No, you cannot.
Why is that?
Because I'm charging you with murder.
I didn't do murder.
Well, I'm charging you with it, and we can prove it, Johnny.
No, you cannot, because I didn't do it.
He stands up the minute they walk out of the room, and he bangs his head on the interview table.
Oh, bud.
Detectives call EMTs to check Johnson out. Once he's given the all clear,
You are good. Get out.
they charge him with murder. As prosecutors prepare to bring Johnny Johnson to trial, his lawyers approach them with a plea offer.
We reached that plea agreement of 20.4 years in prison to second-degree murder, which is what he was charged with. We took that offer to the victim's family, and as you can imagine, the family was very happy to get him to finally acknowledge legally in a courtroom that he was in fact guilty.
I looked at Mandy and she said, Grandma, as old as he is, he got 20 and a half years, and he was supposed to have already been sick. She said, he'll never live to come out of there.
The only thing that I felt was I did feel a little relief knowing that he wasn't out there and that he couldn't do it to anybody else and ruin anybody else's family. But at the same time, it's like you put my family through a lot, and in our minds, like the sentence that he got wasn't enough. I do remember her ambition and her fight. Like she never gave up. It didn't matter, and she's very headstrong. So when she has like something in her head, like she's gonna get to that point, no matter what it takes her.
This one was just a few days before she disappeared because she had just gotten her glasses. We're in the backyard. She never wore glasses before. She said, oh, I'm not going to wear these. I said, well, if you want to see. I didn't know this would be the very last picture. She was just sweet, and that's why I miss her, because we did so much together. I didn't want anything to happen to her, and I would give anything if it had happened to me instead of her. I wish that 1,000 times.
Do you guys feel that basketball saves lives in our community?
Oh, yeah, it's definitely. Can't be out in the streets. Because it is my fault. So if in the gym, versus being in the streets, might have just messed a bullet that was with somebody else before you.
You know, our whole world collapsed in that day.
And whatever coward did this, I hope you caught. Turn yourself in.
It was
willful, deliberate, premeditated. They wanted Lamont Adair dead.
He was a good child. He was a good guy. He was doing something that, mattered.
The video is chilling because you just see the brazen act very clearly.
And my brother did not leave the house thinking that he was going to die that day. He was the one who made the call for him to come up there. He was the one who put Lamont in a location to be a victim of this murder.
Summer 2018. Seat Pleasant, Maryland. A tough suburb just outside of Washington, D.C. A 24-year-old aspiring basketball star, Lamont Adair, has just earned the opportunity of a lifetime. The chance to play professional ball in China.
Oh, he loved basketball. It didn't matter what was going on. If someone called him, Lamont, you want to play ball? He was there. I'm Urania Jackson. I am Lamont's older sister. He always had a basketball somewhere in his hands. Next to family, basketball was everything.
You think it's funny, too? You think it's funny?
He was just really excited. My name is Darlene Rainey. I'm Lamont William Adair Jr.'s mom. He didn't care if he went overseas. He didn't care if he played for the NBA. He just liked to play ball. I thought he played better than Michael Jordan, but
For him, it was like the break that he's been waiting for. Everything was falling into place. Everything was going the way he wanted it to go.
Lamont's path to professional success was full of adversity, but he's always had the support of an adoring family.
Lamont was born on October 23rd, 1993, in the morning, the day of my baby shower. I was helping. Well, I wasn't supposed to be helping with the baby shower, but I was. So I started having labor pains.
We were setting up decorations and everything, and she started having contractions, and she drove herself to the hospital. I was in the 6th grade, and I remember being so excited. He had everyone's heart and wrapped around his fingers, basically.
A little spoiled, but in the sense that that's family and he's a baby brother. Whatever he wanted, he could have gotten from any of us.
Oh, Lord. As a child, Lamont was very busy. Anything that we were doing, he wanted to do it. That's where his basketball career came in, because we would play basketball across the street from my grandmother's house. So whenever we played, we didn't go easy on him. We would just play him just like anyone else. Like, you're going to have to beat us to get to the court. So I think him going through that, it actually helped build his skill.
He started to really hone in on his craft. Like, he was really good at it and really competitive. And then when he started getting taller, it was just like, wow. We called him Monty, but on the basketball court, they called him Tree. He did own the name Tree, just like in his reach, reaching for the ball, being able to dunk.
High school success leads to a chance to play college ball in the Midwest.
He's the first out of all of my mom's kids to go away to college, so we're excited. Iowa was a bit far for us, but you know where he is, and you know he's going for a purpose.
I said, so what do you do out there in Iowa? He's like, they don't do anything but tip cows out here. And I was like, what is that? He's like, they tip cows over. I think he really missed home a lot.
After some basketball injuries and bouts of homesickness, Lamont drops out. Back in Seat Pleasant, he must contend with a different set of concerns.
The level of violence is escalating here. It worried him to come back home. He was scared that something would happen to him.
You would hear of gun violence. You would hear of, different tragedies. If you cross out of Maryland, you're right there in D.C., and sometimes the crime from D.C. would come over into Prince George's County.
But Lamont continues to work on his game, and in 2018, earns his shot to play in China. Months earlier, he received even more thrilling news from an ex-girlfriend. Lamont is going to be a father.
His son's name is Makai. I remember the first time meeting him, I was like, he is the epitome of his father. It just is amazing how DNA is passed to the next generation because he acts just like him. His stance and everything is just like him.
On August 7th, Lamont shares exciting news about his son with his sister Urania.
I remember he came and showed me a video, and he's like, "Did you see Makai walking?" He shows me the phone. He was like, "He's walking."
Oh my gracious!
And this is as he's leaving out of the door. And I give him a hug, and I said, I love you, be safe. And he was like, "Okay, I'll see you later." And, I hold that memory and I cherish it because who would ever think that that would be the last time I see my little brother alive?
The next day, Lamont's older sister receives an alarming call.
I'm at the gas station pumping gas. The phone rings. This guy that Lamont grew up with, he's like, "Your brother just got shot." He just got shot? Like, what do you mean he just got shot? "Oh no, your brother just got shot." And so, I started crying. I asked where it was. He said it was on Craig Street. And when I called 911, I told the operator that somebody just called me and told me that my brother was shot because they sent an ambulance. And she said the police were there. I'm praying that he's okay. Please keep the blood flowing to his heart.
I'm Jonathan Church. I'm a Deputy State's Attorney in Prince George's County State's Attorney's Office. The police get a 911 call for the shots fired on Grigg Street. And when they arrive, they find that a man was suffering from multiple gunshot wounds.
My name is Thea Zumwalt. I'm an Assistant State's Attorney in Prince George's County, Maryland. Paramedics arrived within minutes of the call. He was found between a parked car, and then the curb, and they determined that he was unresponsive.
So as soon as he is pronounced dead, homicide unit shows up. One goal is to come collect all the forensic evidence that they can find. He has his phone with him. So they do identify him as Lamont Adair. And then that starts the homicide detectives running.
The reports that they were getting was that a car drove by and was firing. So they had casings all along the road that they had to make sure that they got them all.
It was somewhere in the neighborhood of 12 fired cartridge casings, which really indicates to us that the gun was fired probably to the point of where it was empty. It was apparent based on the location of the gunshot wounds that some of those are what's called defensive wounds, where he was moving and trying to avoid being shot at, which would give you an indication that the person was walking up on him as he was firing as well.
There were several buildings to this complex, and that apartment complex did have several cameras. So they made it a priority to secure the footage for that.
They don't get to view it right away, so they're dragging in as much potential evidence as possible that might help solve, number one, what that vehicle was, and then who was in the vehicle at the time, and then who would have had a reason to do this.
And once the initial scene is secured, and in this case there was no one who committed the crime who was on scene, so they were able to secure it pretty quickly. And it was a pretty large area that they had to cordon off.
So when we got in there, they had it taped off and wouldn't let us get to where he was. And they was, not letting me see him. No, you can't come close. I said, no, I'm going to see him. But when you deliver a baby and they cut the umbilical cord, it's still an invisible umbilical cord still there. Because you can feel one of your kids, there's something going wrong. I just think about how a waste of life it was.
Investigators discover critical clues in Lamont's final moments.
this person who shot Lamont knew him.
A surprising motive emerges.
The phrase everybody uses is the streets are talking.
There were several rumors that he was a snitch for the police.
And the killer's inner world is revealed.
He's hot-headed. He gets angry.
On 8/8/2018, this is where Lamont William Adair Jr., Tree, Monty was murdered at. Today is his 27th birthday. We miss you, Monty. Rest in peace. Baller for life.
As investigators process the scene of Lamont Adair's murder, local media race to cover the tragedy.
And whatever coward did this, I hope you caught. Turn yourself in.
So a crowd starts to gather because it's a very populated area and it's midday. There's an entire team of detectives that spread out and look at different things, knocking on every door of every apartment that had a window that oversaw where this happened, asking people's names and identification information and phone numbers. What did you see?
There really wasn't anything clear in the immediate information that the detectives received for them to go to figure out why him.
In search of leads, detectives turn back to a piece of evidence recovered from the crime scene.
When Mr. Adair is found, he has his phone with him, and the phone can be like a wealth, a treasure trove of information. They can identify who his family members are, who he is in particular, start talking with family members.
Later that evening, investigators ask Darlene about Lamont's movements that afternoon.
I told them they were living at my house. Lamont and Makai. Lamont had his room downstairs. So he was down there about maybe 2 or 3 hours playing with Makai. And then I think he got a phone call because he came upstairs and he said, "Here, Mom, take him." He was going out to work out like he normally did, but he was meeting somebody.
What she didn't realize is what seemed like an everyday moment would be one of Lamont's last.
I don't know why, but something just told me look out the door. When I saw him walking down the street, and he was gone.
So initially, after talking to family and friends of Lamont Adair, there isn't somebody that readily stands out as a suspect because he's not involved in anything that we're aware of that would have made him a target.
Investigators then turn their focus to Lamont's online activity in the days leading up to his final moments.
There are a team of detectives checking his social media to see who he posted recently with, what he might have said, whether it was something that might have been responded to hostilely.
From what was in his phone, he lived a normal 20-something-year-old talented, handsome individual's life. I mean, he played basketball, he dated women, he loved his little boy, loved his family.
There's videos of him on Instagram, and Makai would be on his legs, around Lamont's neck, and he's up here rocking him to sleep. And he'll fall asleep like that, like laying on his head.
On August 4th, just 4 days before he was murdered, Lamont posted images from a local charity event.
Lamont did a benefit basketball game for an organization called Hoops for Peace.
Do you guys feel that basketball saves lives in our community?
Oh, yes, definitely. Can't be out in the streets, As it is, my fault. So if you're in the gym and versus being in the streets, you might have just messed up with it. That was for somebody else before you. It's just better to be in the gym playing basketball or working out than being outside hanging with your friends.
Lamont was actually cautioning the kids about the streets not having anything for him. And so it's chilling.
And he was saying, I'd rather be in the gym playing ball than to be getting somebody else's bullet or somebody shooting me.
On August 6th, 2 days before he was killed, Lamont posted this image on social media.
His reputation was that he was active in his community. He was trying to inspire others to be better people.
There really wasn't anything definitive in his phone that pointed us in any direction about who did it.
Lamont's family, however, believe his growing notoriety and recent success may have made him a target.
A lot of people were upset with Lamont because of the opportunities that he has. And we're all like, we know he was just about to go play basketball overseas, and really a lot of people were jealous of him.
He was headed to the basketball court not far from where he was shot and killed. Who was he meeting there? Were the people there that were supposed to be there? Where were the people that he was supposed to meet if they weren't there? And one of the people that Lamont may have been going to play basketball with was a man by the name of Thomas.
As they process the events of August 8th, Lamont's family have grown suspicious of the friend who invited him to play ball that afternoon.
My brother did not leave the house thinking that he was going to die that day. Thomas told Lamont, let's go play basketball.
People were going around saying that Thomas set it up, which we felt that way anyway, because it was just too coincidental that you call him and tell him to come up and play.
Rumors suggest that Thomas may have coordinated with the gunman to get Lamont to Gregg Street.
If anyone were able to call him somewhere, it would be Thomas, because he trusted him.
The indication was that he was plotting to do this to Lamont. There were rumors. He knew that it was happening and they helped facilitate it.
Lamont's family have tipped off investigators to a friend who may have been involved in the murder.
Thomas was somebody who was on scene at the time of the murder. Detectives were looking at him as possibly being involved, or at least not telling what he really knew about him.
Thomas was one of the first names that I gave to the detectives. He was the one who made the call for him to come up there. He was the one who got him to come out of the house. He was the one who put Lamont in a location to be a victim of this murder.
Police actually interviewed Thomas. He came into the station and they interviewed him there to determine whether he might have been involved or what he knew.
Investigators begin by questioning Thomas about his plans for that day.
So when police talk to him, he's very quiet, trying to figure things out. You can tell he's contemplative. He had not yet met with Lamont and didn't know anything that was useful. They just didn't get any information that was usable from Thomas.
Detectives then set out to validate his version of events.
We had 6 or 7 cell phone dumps that we went through. His phone was pulled, and there was no indication that he had anything to do with the murder of Lamont Adair.
They could tell that he called Lamont up to the scene. He was the one who made the call for him to come up there. But they didn't feel like he was involved.
After clearing Thomas, detectives gain access to the footage from the housing complex that could reveal Lamont's final moments.
So when police actually pull the footage of this video camera that's on the corner of one of the apartment buildings, it does a 360-degree pan. Every couple seconds, it starts to pan away into the back through an alley to another street and then back around to the front. And we have very small snippets of it because it's rotating the entire time.
Detectives then cue the tape up to the moment in question.
And at about 3:49, 3:50 that afternoon, you can see an individual who we know is Lamont Adair based on where he falls and where police find him. And then eventually you see a gray Toyota Corolla pull up. And that's when the driver's door opens and the driver jumps out of the vehicle and approaches Lamont Adair.
The video is chilling because you see the figure just fire, shooting in broad daylight, and you see Lamont get down to his knees and he's trying to fight. but he's just executed on the street in front of everybody.
And then the camera pans out of view.
When the camera returns to the scene, the final moments of the tragedy unfold.
After he had shot Lamont, he runs back to the driver's side. He can't get into the driver's side. He hops to the back of the car. He gets in and the car drives away. He couldn't identify any movement in the car, but we were able to determine that there was somebody else in the car at the time who was in the driver's seat because the car drove away with the defendant in the back.
But we know there's another person who witnessed the shooting, a person who slid into the driver's seat and shut the door.
To me, this person who shot Lamont knew him. I mean, it was willful, deliberate, premeditated. They wanted Lamont Adair dead.
I am Aisha Braveboy, State's Attorney for Prince George's County, Maryland. Surveillance video can be extremely helpful in identifying suspects. In this case, however, it was very, very grainy, so it was very difficult to make out the features of the suspect.
You can tell that the driver who exited the car had dreads, was an African-American male. Beyond that, there was nothing in that video that could tell us who that was. It was a very small, common car, gray in color. There was nothing unique about it. There was no way to tell the license plate.
But upon rewatching Lamont's final moments, they observe someone else who may be able to identify the killer.
So the shooting takes place right here, but in the video you actually see this maintenance worker had pulled up to the main street where the defendant's car was traveling. But you saw in the video, they saw everything. And then initially when I reviewed this video, I said to John, let's get this maintenance worker in.
Days later, investigators bring this eyewitness in for questioning.
How you doing, sir? I do appreciate you coming and taking the time to talk to me. I'm sure you're busy and really don't want to be involved. I just want to get some basic information from you. And what do you do over there? On the day of the shooting, you remember that day?
Yeah, I remember.
Can you tell me what happened?
I just back in and pull up in the car because he just come pull up, start shooting.
The person that was doing the shooting, can you describe the person at all?
Right. Like my head is back of a devil.
We missed them. Lamont's 27th birthday, baller for life, celebration of his life. This is Lamont's niece that he never met. She'll be a year old. All right, this month.
It's Calvin, a friend of mine too. Man, we miss you down here. You know, you want to live forever, be your family, real friends. Happy birthday, happy 27th birthday. We love you, miss you.
Happy birthday, Monty! 27th birthday!
Investigators are questioning a witness who observed Lamont Adair's final moments in hopes of identifying the shooter.
On the day of the shooting, you remember that day?
I just back in and pull up in the car because he just come pull up, start shooting.
The person that was doing the shooting, can you describe the person at all?
I don't know the person who got shot. I don't know the one who shot.
Did you see someone get out of the car?
No.
No?
No.
Can't describe anything about them?
No, because I'm scared. I don't wait for, I don't look for nothing.
This maintenance worker, he didn't see anything.
You know, black, white, Asian.
No.
So it was a very frustrating, moment for us.
I appreciate you coming in to talk to me. I mean, of course, I wish you had more information, but I appreciate you.
The witness's failure to identify the shooter highlights a major challenge detectives are facing.
Sadly, there is an anti-snitching mentality for witnesses, and a lot of that probably is out of fear, and they've got to live with the people that may have been involved in the incident.
I understand the very real danger that people may feel if they do talk about cases. But in this particular case, it was so frustrating to see the number of people out, and nobody saw anything who could really tell us where to go.
In the face of community silence, Lamont's family decides to speak out.
The neighborhood didn't talk. So we got together as a family and we're like, well, we need to go up there and protest. We walked from the street where he was murdered all the way down to the rec center.
What do we want? Justice! When do we want it? Now!
The thing that mattered to me most was making sure someone opened their mouth enough to find out who did this to my brother.
Don't sit and hide behind the windows and curtains. Tell what you know.
I said, today is my son, Lamont William Dale Jr. Tomorrow it could be your father, your brother, somebody you love, so you would want to tell what happened because you would want somebody to tell you what happened to your family member.
In the days following the protest, it's apparent that their message is getting through.
People had started inboxing me from seeing us on the news, from seeing us up there protesting, from us pleading with the community members to speak up.
The detectives fielded many reports from the family about what they had heard, who they heard it from, and the family was really active in trying to just find out information and funnel it to the detectives.
One rumor suggests that an incident in Lamont's past made him a target for revenge.
There were several rumors. One of them was that he was possibly a snitch for the police. That was basically that came up because he had recently, prior to this, had acquired a weed charge where he was found in a car smoking some weed.
Like most of the kids his age, Lamont has started recreational use of marijuana. I think that's the way that he, detached from his issues or problems. And he had gotten into some trouble, and they arrested him.
It seems that after the arrest, some individuals may have viewed Lamont with suspicion.
I don't believe he was in jail for very long when he had been arrested for that, and certainly some of the rumors that circulate is that if you're out quickly that you must be working with the police. And I guess the phrase everybody uses is the streets are talking. And so some of the original rumors that went around were that potential suspects could be people who weren't happy about that.
Detectives reach out to their partners in the narcotics unit.
It wasn't a big charge. There would be no reason for him to want to subject himself to the dangers of becoming a snitch to work off a weed charge.
We had no knowledge that he had been working with police on anything.
Lamont didn't tell on anybody. He took the charge, and then he put that moment behind him, and he moved forward. Like that little scare turned his life around.
It's another dead end. But then, a friend of Lamont approaches police, claiming she has knowledge about the gunman seen on the surveillance video.
Do you want something to drink real quick while I get my stuff?
No, I'm fine.
State your full name, please.
Kenya had asked to talk to the detectives in charge of the case because she believed she had some information about who had done it. And that's when the case really got started.
Detectives begin by asking Kenya about her connection to Lamont.
He's been over my house, but Lamont has been my friend for so long, I would never do anything to put him in any type of harm's way.
So, explain to me, you said you believe you know a motive.
Kenya then reveals something that she previously kept secret. She and Lamont were more than just friends.
So I'm not denying that Lamont and I had anything going on.
When did you start sleeping with Lamont?
We didn't start sleeping together until June. And that's why I'm coming here.
According to Kenya, the relationship with Lamont pushed her ex over the edge.
What makes you think that, because of everything that was going on between you and him, that he would go and kill Lamont?
I really feel like he did it. He's hot-headed. He gets angry. He's a loose cannon. I feel like he did it just because of the situation. I'm worried that if he did do it, he might come after me.
Well, what would make you think he would do it?
He told me he would kill me.
On August 10th, 2018, a woman named Kenya tells investigators that her ex, Franklin Scott, may have killed Lamont Adair.
She wanted the police to know that she and Franklin Scott had a pretty tumultuous relationship consisting of several protective orders, but also 2 young children. So they were on again, off again. I believe there was allegations that he had tased her. So there was definitely a rocky relationship there. That relationship officially ended in the beginning of May of 2018.
Because he's seen that Lamont was so supportive of me. He hacked into my Snapchat and he's seen how often Lamont and I were together.
Franklin Scott was clearly obsessed with Lamont Adair and the relationship that Lamont had had with Kenya.
Frank is short. He's like 5'3", and he's always self-conscious about that. Like, you don't want me because I'm small, I'm short, you want to talk. It's so messed up that you just moved on with a basketball player.
He lost it, knowing that she ran to basically his worst nightmare, a talented, tall, good-looking guy.
It makes me cry, but I really feel like he did it.
Then she offers more details that increase the detective's interest.
What's he look like?
He's short. He's about 5'3". He has dreads.
What kind of hair does he have?
He has dreads, long dreads.
How long are they?
Maybe like,
Down there?
Yeah.
He had long dreads. He matched the physical description of the person who conducted the shooting. Franklin Scott did have a prior firearms charge, so we knew from that he had access to weapons. So that also was something that we were looking at as important.
When they ask Kenya what type of vehicle he drives, she says that he used to drive a BMW and that was in the shop. She mentions that she believes he's been driving a rental vehicle, possibly a gray Toyota.
The same type of car observed in the surveillance video. Investigators then ask about her contact with Scott on August 8th.
She told police that she received a phone call from Franklin Scott the day of the murder. She was at work at the time.
He was in the car driving when I was speaking to him.
Do you remember hearing any voices? Anybody else that could have been with him?
It was somebody else with him. He has I know his voice is kind of deep but high at the same time.
She said she recognized that voice to be Elijah Wan Jackson because his voice is characteristically raspy.
It was O.J. Jackson. He had a nickname of O.J. the Shooter. He had a prior record as well.
If you had to leave right now and go find him, where would you go?
I don't know. Mom? Maybe at O.J.'s house?
At the time, the detectives were looking everywhere for him. They put out feelers everywhere trying to track him down. But after the murder, they were already gone.
To narrow the search, they continue to focus on the vehicle spotted in the video.
It's not until Kenya kind of comes out and we find out that the suspect rented a vehicle. She mentions a gray Toyota. Eventually, they do locate the rental vehicle, parked on a street in the Seat Pleasant area.
After the murder, Franklin Scott basically parked the Corolla and walked off.
A search of the car reveals bullet fragments inside. But there's no sign of the murder weapon. Then, in their quest to locate Scott, investigators recall a detail from his criminal past.
They knew that he had to report for his pending gun charge in Anne Arundel County.
Well, one of the detectives realized that Mr. Scott had a court date. And so on August 23rd, Prince George's County Police Department were sitting on the Anne Arundel County Courthouse in Glen Burnie, Maryland, waiting for Mr. Scott to show up for his court date. And it was then that they arrested him for the murder of Lamont Adair.
If he had thought that Kenya would be likely to talk, I think he wouldn't have set foot in that courthouse.
He's taken to the Criminal Investigation Division for the Prince George's County Police Department, and he asks for a lawyer, so the police never get a chance to speak to him.
Eager to collect more evidence against Scott, detectives begin monitoring his phone calls from prison.
Within the week that he was arrested, he had made some jail calls asking his acquaintance to help him get rid of his babies, which the detectives were able to determine he was talking about his guns.
Locating the weapon used in the murder would bolster the prosecution's case.
Unfortunately, they listened to the jail calls a couple days after they were made, so by the time they were able to get a search warrant and search the house, there was no indication of any firearms there.
The failure to find the weapon is a blow to the investigation.
What we had at that time was not enough. It was enough for probable cause, which got Franklin Scott to be arrested, but it wasn't enough to find him guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. We knew we needed somebody involved in that moment to be able to be in court and point at Franklin Scott and say he's the one who shot repeatedly at Lamont Adair and killed him.
That man is Elijah Jackson.
If we wanted who was truly responsible for this, we had to find him. So police immediately zeroed in to track him down.
To bring the killer of Lamont Adair to justice, investigators must track down his suspected accomplice, O.J. Jackson.
I had been watching social media, and OJ was traveling. He would go to Texas or Florida, I think it was, come back. Like, he's active on his social media page.
But 16 days after the homicide, police get word that Jackson has returned to the Seat Pleasant area.
On August 24th, police find Elijah Jackson at his home, and that's when they bring him in to interview him about his involvement.
They interviewed him pretty extensively for a couple hours. At the end of the interview, he got real quiet, and the detectives asked him something, and he indicated that he wanted to talk to his mother. And his mother came in, and you saw a pretty profound exchange.
His mother tells him, you need to tell the police the truth. You don't need to be going down for this. You need to be honest.
Elijah Jackson is finally ready to provide a first-hand account of the tragic events captured by the security camera.
He made it sound like he bumped into Franklin Scott as he was walking. I think that Franklin Scott picked him up.
He hears Franklin Scott say, there he goes. The car slows down, pulls a gun out of the driver's side door. Handle shoots out the window a few times, opens the door, and jumps out of the car. And he says the car keeps going. And he jumps over into the driver's seat and put the brake on.
Then Jackson observed Lamont's final moment.
Scott is standing over Lamont Adair and firing. I think it all happened so fast, and it was a surprise to OJ. OJ Jackson just wanted to get out of Dodge.
OJ indicated that he was not expecting it. However, he did get into the front driver's side seat. He was ultimately charged with accessory after the fact.
Franklin Scott accepted responsibility for what he did as well, and primarily because he knew that Elijah Jackson was going to offer testimony against him.
Franklin Scott pled guilty to first-degree murder. I'm pretty proud of that. It's a more certain outcome than going to trial. So I'm happy with the results.
Elijah Jackson is serving a 6-year sentence. Franklin Scott is serving 50 years.
The heartbreaking part about it was, if I recall correctly, the mothers knew each other from the neighborhood. That was a really profound thing to sit and observe.
I mean, I know Franklin's mother, but I hadn't seen Franklin in a long time, so I couldn't identify him from a cracked egg. I walked over, I said, how you doing? And she just started shaking and crying. My son was the one who killed your son. Of course, me, I hug her. And my kids are like, Mom, why are you hugging her? And I felt one mother to another. You know, my son is dead. Yours going away for 50 years. It's like he almost dead. But I told him, I said, I have to forgive you for the God in me, but I'll never forget what you have stole from my family, me and my family. You took something very dear from us. Lamont, Tree, Monty. You had no right to do that. You weren't God. But you tried to play God that day.
With the murder case resolved, the family continues to process their grief and replay Lamont's final moments.
Makai had just started walking right before Lamont passed. He shows me the phone, and I'm just like trying to hold back the tears. I had a feeling about Lamont like it was the last time I was going to see him. It was very weird when I think about it, and how I felt like I had to just let him go because I was getting teary-eyed, and that was the last time I saw Lamont. Him sharing a moment from Makai being able to walk.
I wish I had offered him a ride that day. It's a lot of things you look at and you're like, you could have done differently.